Chapter 45. For the sake of Yang Qindong's safety, 2 new groups of guards were added. The first group's leader, Qiu Vi, was given the rank of Private First Class. The second group's leader, Dao Xiao, was given the rank of Private First Class, and the newly formed cavalry leader, Zhui Feng, was given the rank of Private First Class. The first batch of 5 instructors, He Yang, Song Desheng, Zhu Ziguang, Qi Ming and Shi Yi, were given the rank of Second Lieutenant. The first batch of political instructors, Luan Xiaochen, Jing Shuang, Kong Jie, Mo Qingyu and Ji Fei, were given the rank of Private First Class. Also worth mentioning was the youngest, Luan Xiaoyu. She was appointed as the first propaganda leader and was given the rank of Second Lieutenant. Wearing the modified female officer's uniform, she looked valiant, showing off her noble temperament. It was unknown how many people's eyes lit up when they saw her. Many girls had already vowed in their hearts that they would work hard to exercise their bodies, study hard and join the army in the future. They would become female soldiers and wear this eye-catching female military uniform like Luan Xiaoyu. Presumably, at that time, the door would be broken by the boys who would come knocking on the door. After Luan Xiaoyu, more than 100 official soldiers who had been transferred from auxiliary soldiers to the Cold Vanguard came to the stage. This was the last time Yang Qindong would give a title to a group of ordinary soldiers. This was because in the future, as the number of soldiers increased, he would not be able to handle it all by himself. Titles, necklaces, badges and guns were given to each soldier. After the military titles were given, the next step was to give out awards to those who had contributed to Qixian City. There was also an appointment ceremony. The award system was set up to encourage those who had made a special contribution. There were 7 grades. From highest to lowest they were First Class Medal, Second Class Medal, Third Class Medal, Gold Medal, Silver Medal, Bronze Medal and finally Iron Medal. Each medal contained a certain amount of gold. It was not only an honor, but also a considerable economic value. It ensured that when the descendants of the winners were in dire straits, these medals could change the current situation of the family. The appointment ceremony was another way of giving an official title. The difference from the Ming Dynasty was that the title of an official was completely different. From the lowest to the highest, it was divided into 11 grades, namely Section Chief, Section Chief, Section Chief, Deputy Section Chief, Section Chief, County, Deputy Bureau Chief, Bureau Chief, City, Deputy Minister, Minister, Province, and the highest grade was the National Committee member. Those who were appointed and received the medal for the first time were Wu Gang, director of the munitions factory, Li Xuanfu, director of the furniture and training factory, Luan Qi, director of the power plant, Zhou Hua, director of the garment factory, Jing Guang, director of the cement factory, Qin Ming, director of the glass factory, Kong'an, director of the paper factory, Hong Shi, director of the brewery, and Hong Yi, director of the shipyard. They were all appointed to the rank of section chief and awarded silver medals. Whenever someone went up to the stage to receive an award, there would be a round of applause from the audience. The thunderous sound greatly twisted everyone's hearts together. With the active efforts of Luan Xiaochen and the other instructors, Crimson City had become an iron fortress. At this point, Yang Qindong could finally relax and head to the capital. On the 3rd day after the ceremony, Yang Qindong left. He did not inform too many people and left quietly. This was related to the fact that he did not like scenes of life and death. However, when the sun had just risen and he was about to leave, he saw that the people of the city were already standing on both sides of the street, waiting to send him off. In the crowd, Luan Xiaoyu was crying her eyes out. Even though she was already an officer and did not want to cry in public, when she saw Yang Qindong, who had changed into a green robe, she could not stop her tears from flowing. When had Yang Qindong ever wanted to go to the capital? However, he still had the blood of the descendants of China, and his brothers and sisters were also in the capital. If possible, he did not want to become enemies with the Ming Dynasty. This time he was trying to change something. If possible, he was even willing to coexist with the Ming Dynasty. After all, this was a dynasty with backbone. The sovereign was willing to die for the country, and the Son of Heaven guarded the gates of the country. This was not something that the sovereigns of other dynasties could compare to. Of course, he could also establish his own country in Qiqian, just like Deng Maoqi, who was causing trouble in Fujian. However, if he did that, who knew how many people would die in the flames of war? Unless it was absolutely necessary, he absolutely did not want to do that. As Yang Qindong was about to leave, Gao Xiong, the highest military commander, appeared in the front row. Gao Xiong, this day is too short. This young master wanted to go with you to explore Ryukyu Island. It would be best if we could fight a few battles to our heart's content, but time waits for no one. I will leave this matter to you. But remember, if you can avoid killing people, do so. Most of the people living here are Han, and they were forced to leave their homes to come here. Give them a chance if you can, understand? This was not the first time this matter had been emphasized, and Gao Xiong immediately stood at attention. Young master, be at ease. Gao Xiong will definitely kill fewer people and capture more people. Okay. Yang Qindong gave a firm nod, and then, under the protection of his guards, he followed the smooth and spacious cement road out of Crimson City, accompanied by the reverent gazes of the soldiers and civilians. Compared to when he had first arrived, the number of guards at his side had greatly increased. When he had arrived, including Qiao Yin and Yang Qindong, there had only been 5 of them, but now there were 25 of them. Qiu Vi and Dao Xiao each led 2 groups of 20 guards. The group boarded the ship first, and then, when it was almost noon, they arrived at the Black Pier and disembarked. Tell them to keep a sufficient distance from us. If there's no danger, don't appear. Yang Qindong didn't want to be too ostentatious. He was going to the capital, a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. There were all kinds of people there. If they found out that he, a mere 9th-level official, had returned to the capital with so many guards, it would be strange if they didn't become vigilant. Tiger's Mane went to inform Qiu Vi and Dao Xiao. Within the carriage, Qiao Yin leaned against Yang Qindong and said with a yearning expression, "Young Master Yin also wants to be a female officer. Little sister Xiaoyu's military uniform is so beautiful. Yin is so envious." Good. If Yin is willing, I'll have one made for you in the future. When he thought about how the grown-up Qiao Yin would look in a military uniform, Yang Qindong's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of longing and anticipation. Qiao Yin did not notice any of this. She was a little careless, so she asked in a bold and unrestrained manner, "Young master, is the capital fun?" Young master only stayed there when he was a child, so I don't have much of an impression of it. But I think it should be fun, Yang Qindong said with a hint of hope in his eyes. This was the capital of the great Ming Dynasty, the predecessor of Beijing. He truly wanted to see just how majestic and magnificent that place was. Without the wide cement roads, the carriage could not go fast even if they wanted to, and they also had to consider Qiao Yin's feelings. Just the journey from the Black Pier to the Tianjin Guard took more than a month. After meeting up with Yang Wu, Yang Lu Yi Qiuer, and the others, they began to make their way to the capital. Even though it wasn't a very long distance, it still took them 10-some days to walk. By the time they finally saw the high walls of the capital, it was already the end of the 8th month. Steward Yang Hai had long ago received the news and had been waiting at the gate with his son Yang Qindong. When he received Yang Qindong, he did not even enter the gates of the capital. Instead, he circled around the walls of the capital and made his way to the New Yang Manor 15 li south of the city. As early as last year, Yang Hai had used the money to buy a manor with a total of 2,000 mu of land. Now there were high-yield potatoes planted here that no one knew about. Seeing that the harvest was not far away, some of them had basically matured. After more than a month of traveling, even Yang Qindong was exhausted, let alone Qiao Yin and Yi Qiuer. The moment they arrived, they found their rooms and went to sleep. Yang Qindong truly could not rest at this time, as there were far too many things he needed to take care of. He first met with Yang San, who had arrived 3 months earlier, and gained a basic understanding of the current situation in the capital. From what he had heard, Wang Zhen and the other eunuchs were still in control of the court. Although Zhu Qizhen was already 21 years old, he was still like a child, listening to his teacher, Wang Zhen, on everything to the point that he had lost his ability to make basic judgments. As a result, those officials who did not like this and refused to lower their heads to Wang Zhen were mostly punished. There were even some who were imprisoned by the Eastern Cabinet. Other than the ministers of the 6 bureaus and a few important officials, very few people could stand in the imperial court and speak the truth. The situation was so severe that it was no wonder the incident at the Tumu Castle occurred 1 year later. It was precisely after that incident that the Great Ming began to weaken, entering the middle stage of its development. Zhu Qizhen was not a bad person at heart, and he had a good heart. It was just that he was not good at using people. For example, when it came to eunuchs, he had first used Wang Zhen, and later on he had used Chao Jixiang, causing the Great Ming to constantly fall from grace. This was particularly true of Wang Zhen. It had clearly been proven that he was the greatest culprit behind the Tumu Castle incident, but later on, when Yingzong regained the throne, he had actually rehabilitated him and granted him a temple. Yang Qindong truly didn't know what to say in the face of such an emperor. As he had said before, Yang Qindong did not want to become enemies with the Great Ming, and he still felt some admiration for this dynasty. Besides protecting the safety of the Yang clan, He had also come to the capital to single-handedly reverse the course of the imperial court. But now it seemed that while his thoughts were beautiful, reality was cruel. Yang Chendong retracted his thoughts and thought of his older brothers and sisters. Enough. Tell me about my family. Chapter 46. There was no doubt about Yang Rong's ability to govern. Even when it came to giving birth, he had a total of 13 children. 6 of them were boys and 7 were girls. In that era where medical treatment was not advanced, giving birth to a child was like going through the gates of hell for many pregnant women. However, these children had all grown up. Other than the second daughter, Yang Xia, who died of illness, the others were all living well. Moreover, her brothers were all officials and most of her sisters were married to people with official positions. The eldest brother, Yang Gong, went by the courtesy name of Yushan. He was the deputy of Shangbao, a rank 6 official. He was in charge of the emperor's imperial jade seal, talisman and seals. However, it was just a nice title. In reality, it had nothing to do with him. The second brother, Yang Rang, went by the courtesy name of Xingda. He was the one who was doing the best. He was in charge of the Ministry of Rights and was a rank 6 official. He was also the only one who had some actual power. Yang San's investigation showed that this second brother wanted to replace his eldest brother and become the leader of the Yang family. The third brother, Yang Shi, went by the courtesy name of Wan Ming. He was in charge of the Ministry of Rights and was a rank 9 official. In the end, he was just a little stronger than ordinary officials. The fourth brother, Yang Yang, went by the courtesy name of Qingda. He was a rank 8 official in the Imperial College. Later he retired because he beat someone up. Now he stayed at home and ate and drank when he had nothing to do. He had become a complete hedonist. The fifth brother, Yang Guifeng, went by the courtesy name of Wen Lin. He was a rank 9 official in the Zhan government. He was in charge of the internal affairs of the imperial family. These were the 5 brothers of Yang Qindong of the Yang family. Looking at the records, the 6th young master smiled bitterly and shook his head. He thought that after Yang Rong passed away, the future of the Yang family would not be as good as before. However, he did not think that it would be so bad. This was basically the same as being kicked out of the imperial court. If no one in this generation worked hard, it was likely that the next generation would completely disappear into the crowd. It seemed that it would not be easy to turn the situation around. Yang Qindong had to do a lot of things. Forget it. Since I am here, the situation will naturally change. Yang Qindong said confidently in his heart. Then she took the information of the 6 sisters and read it. Unknowingly she fell asleep. The next day, the second day after Yang Qindong arrived at the Yang clan manor, it welcomed its first group of guests. They were the Yang family's 4th brother Yang Yang, 5th brother Yang Guifeng, 5th sister Yang Li, 6th sister Yang Qin, eldest brothers Sun Yang Zhao, 2nd brothers Sun Yang Yen, and 3rd brothers Sun Yang Luan. With the sudden arrival of so many relatives, the main hall of the Yang family village became very lively. Yang Qindong was no longer as tired as he was yesterday. He was now full of energy. He, who was still dressed in green, greeted his brothers and sisters one by one. This was the first time that Yang Dong, not that Yang Qindong, saw these relatives. When his mother passed away, although they had personally or sent people to the Yang family mansion, at that time, Yang Qindong was in a coma due to grief and did not see them at all. Haha, 6th brother, your spirit is much better than when you were young. How is it? Is there any problem with your body? 4th brother Yang Qindong was tall and big. He was half a head taller than the current Yang Qindong. As soon as they met, he patted his shoulder affectionately. Seeing that Yang Qindong was indifferent and unaffected, he nodded his head in satisfaction. Not bad, your body is fine. From now on, follow 4th brother. I will bring you to see the prosperity of the capital. If there are any blind people, the 2 of us will beat them up together. Ah. A hedonistic son was indeed a hedonistic son. The moment they met, he invited them to fight together. 4th brother, 6th brother has just arrived. Don't lead him astray. 5th brother Yang Qindong had the face of a scholar. He looked honest and sincere. He was afraid that 4th brother would lead Yang Qindong astray, so he spoke up to ease the situation. Enough, 5th brother. If you don't want to fight with 4th brother, then don't stop 6th brother, okay? Ever since father passed away, look at what our Yang family has become. Even if we have to live with our tails between our legs, we should still have the courage to go out and fight. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. Yang Yang seemed to want to use this opportunity to vent something. In this regard, Yang Qindong vaguely felt something, but he didn't point it out. After all, the investigation by the Security Bureau was only superficial. He still needed to find out the character of his brothers and sisters by himself. Okay. Seeing that the family was about to quarrel as soon as they met, fifth sister Yang Li hurriedly interrupted. Sixth sister Yang Qin didn't even look at her two brothers. Instead, she smiled at Yang Qindong and said, "Sixth brother, you must have had a hard time on the road. I heard that there is a disaster in Fujian. You didn't encounter it, did you?" "No, I was hiding." Yang Qindong chuckled. He didn't seem to be a shrewd person, but inside he was happy because of these words of concern. In his previous life, Yang Dong was an orphan. He grew up in the village and was busy running around when he joined the army. He didn't even have a home. He also didn't have any brothers or sisters who cared about him. Now that he had these brothers and sisters, there were people who cared about him. This made him very happy. That's right. When a scholar meets a soldier, he can't explain himself. Hiding is the right thing to do. Yang Qin also chuckled. Yang Qindong nodded repeatedly. Then he had Xiaoyin bring out the prepared fruit platter. This was all made by the cook Yi Qiuer. It was modified according to Yang Qindong's suggestions, so it naturally tasted good. When the fruit platter was brought out, the brothers and sisters all praised it loudly after tasting it. This was especially true for the three nephews. They ate until their hands and mouths were full. Even though their stomachs were stuffed, they still didn't look satisfied. "Don't worry. When we leave later, each of you should bring 2 platters back and let your family have a taste." Yang Qindong was still chuckling. At the same time, he felt a little bitter in his heart. Although the fruit platter tasted good, it didn't seem to be enough to make the Yang family eat to such an extent. However, this was still the case. It was obvious that the descendants of the Yang family didn't have a good life. It was far worse than he had imagined. Six brothers' food is indeed delicious. When we leave later, let's bring some back and share it with your sisters-in-law. Yang said without hesitation. Then his gaze landed on Yang Qindong and the other nephews. He waved his hand and said, "Since you've seen them and eaten, you can go out and play." "Yes." Yang Qindong and the other 2 nephews felt a little awkward staying here. Since they had the chance to go out and relax, they naturally agreed. Soon, only Yang Qindong, his 2 brothers and 2 sisters were left in the main hall. Without his children around, Yang's expression suddenly became much more solemn. "Sixth brother, what do you intend to do in the capital this time around?" "Of course, I'm going to become an official." "Sixth brother might be young, but you're already a rank 9 official. Of course you have to serve the royal court." Before Yang Qindong could reply, fifth brother Yang Guifang had already made the decision for him. "Become an official?" Yang's voice was filled with disdain when he heard those words. "My brothers, including me, are all officials, but what have we done? We're just idling away our days and using up the legacy our father left for us. Now that the eunuchs are in power, I don't think there's any point in becoming an official." Yang had beaten up a little eunuch who didn't know his place. If Yang Rong was still around, this wouldn't have been a big deal. But now eunuchs had extremely high statuses. If not for the fact that his father was Yang Rong, and that the little eunuch didn't have any status, Yang would have already been sent to prison. It was unknown whether he was still alive or not. What else can you do if you don't become an official? You have to live your life, right? Yang Guifang didn't agree with fourth brother's opinion, and his words carried a hint of rebuttal. There are many ways to live your life. Now that sixth brother has the Yang family manor, it's enough for you to support yourself. Why do you need to become an official and suffer such humiliation? The more Yang spoke, the more agitated he became. His face was flushed red as though he was reminiscing about his past. Seeing that fourth brother and fifth brother were about to quarrel again, Yang Qindong naturally didn't want to break the harmony. He smiled and said, "Even if you don't become an official, you can still do business. That way you can earn more money and support yourself." Originally, Yang Qindong just wanted to say that there were many other ways to go if he didn't become an official. There were many choices. But he didn't expect that when these words came out, the entire central room immediately became quiet. Everyone looked at him with surprise and shock. "What? Did I say something wrong?" Yang Qindong had a puzzled look on his face. Thinking back carefully, he didn't do anything excessive. "That sixth brother, don't make fun of sixth sister. I did marry a businessman, but he still treats me well. I'm quite satisfied." The sixth sister Yang Qin spoke. As she spoke, she lowered her head as if she had done something shameful. "And? What's going on?" Yang Qindong was even more confused. He really didn't know why everyone was looking at him like this, and he didn't know why sixth sister would say this. Yang Qindong opened his mouth wide with a puzzled look. He looked at fifth sister Yang Li's eyes. Sixth brother, do you really not know? Your sixth sister married a businessman. You also know that a businessman's status is only slightly better than a slave status. It's even worse than an ordinary person. At this moment, Yang Qindong suddenly remembered that in the Great Ming Dynasty, people were divided into classes. To be specific, they were divided into 5 classes. The first class was the noble class, which was usually dominated by aristocratic families. The second class was the good class, which referred to ordinary people. The third class was the merchant class, which, as the name suggested, was a merchant. The fourth class was the slave class, which was the status of a slave. Once sold, it might be a slave class for life. Unless the master was willing to give the government a large sum of money to change the class, the children born would also directly become a slave class. The fifth class was the cheap class, which referred to prostitutes, actors, and so on. Chapter 47. In the Ming Dynasty there was a clear hierarchy. When the Ming Dynasty entered a period of decline, the merchants slowly developed to the same level as the commoners. Since ancient times, money made the world go round. However, the sixth sister Yang Qin married a merchant. Because of this, the eldest and second brothers of the Yang family were very unhappy. However, their father had already passed away and their mother was still alive, so it became a reality. Just now, Yang Qindong casually said that he could do business to earn money. It was no wonder that everyone looked at him like that. Even the sixth sister, Yang Qin, took the initiative to explain. It was reasonable for them to think that she was secretly hinting at him. Suddenly thinking of this, Yang Qindong immediately said to the sixth sister, "It's my fault. I really didn't think too much. Also, when I said business, I wasn't talking about other people. This is my true thoughts." "Your true thoughts? Sixth brother, are you really going to do business?" The straightforward fourth brother, Yang Yang, widened his eyes in disbelief. Yes. Yang Qindong knew that some things had to be explained clearly in advance. Otherwise, if he did something and his brothers and sisters came to persuade him, it would be bad for his face. Business can earn money and strengthen the country. Why not? Also, I'm not just doing business. I can do business as an official. That way, won't there be some benefits? Do business as an official? This time it was the fifth brother Yang Guifeng who shook his head. "Sixth brother, you should know that if an official wants to do business, the lowest rank one can do it. You're only a 9th rank official right now. It's easier said than done. Rising from the 9th grade to the 5th grade was more than just 3 grades in a row. One had to go from the 8th grade to the 7th grade to the 6th grade to the 5th grade. Even if one wanted to reach 5th rank, one had to go up 7 ranks. Even the eldest and second brother, who were doing the best in the Yang family, were only 6th rank. Even if they wanted to go up half a rank, it was extremely difficult. How old was Yang Qindong, and he didn't have any contributions. Wanting to do this was no different from a fantasy story. It's fine. I know what I'm doing." Yang Qindong just smiled calmly. Since he wanted to do business, he naturally knew the rules here. He had already thought of a way and believed that it wouldn't be difficult to get a 5th rank official. Since Yang Qindong said so, everyone just thought that he wanted to save face and didn't want to show weakness. Therefore, they didn't dwell on this matter and talked about other things. After this conversation, Yang Qindong's mood became very bad. He was even furious in his heart. According to what fifth sister Yang Qindong had said, after knowing that sixth brother had come to the capital, all the elder brothers and sisters should have come. However, eldest brother and second brother were proud of their status. They were elders and their official ranks were much higher than Yang Qindong's. Sixth brother should have been the one to pay them a visit. As for third brother, he was angry. He had worked hard for many years to get an official position, and he was still a 9th rank official. However, his sixth brother was so much younger than him and was already a 9th rank official. This made him lose face. Thus, like eldest brother and second brother, he sent his own son to come as a formality. The elder brothers were like this, but the elder sisters didn't have the intention to use their status. They all had their own reasons and difficulties. Eldest sister Yang Fei was indeed unwell. It had been a while and it was said that she was much better. However, she didn't want to bring her illness to her younger brother. Thus she didn't come. As for third sister Yang Jing, fourth sister Yang Mei, and seventh sister Yang Duo, it was because they didn't have a choice. This choice referred to the fact that they didn't have any say in their husbands' families. Moreover, because of the decline of the Yang clan, their status in their husbands' families had plummeted. Now, even though they knew that sixth brother had come to the capital from Jianing, they still couldn't ask for leave and couldn't come to see him. Eldest brother, second brother and third brother, whether they wanted to save face or were embarrassed, they didn't come. In any case, Yang Chendong was the youngest. At worst he could just go and see them. However, the matter of third sister, fourth sister and seventh sister really made Yang Chendong furious. As a woman, her own younger brother came from thousands of li away, but she didn't even have the freedom to see him. Was she getting married, or being a servant, or being ordered around like an old mother? At this moment, Yang Chendong really wanted to take a gun and kill his way to their door. He wanted to ask those three so-called in-laws of the Yang clan what they wanted to do. Were they tired of living? Yang Chendong's expression became very ugly. Fifth sister Yang Li quickly shut her mouth. On the other hand, fourth brother Yang Yang was still chattering. Who can be blamed for this? When they were getting married, no one forced them. They were all willing. Especially that Wang Go that seventh sister wanted to marry. At that time I was against it. He came from a poor family. Once he gained power, he entered the Hanlin Academy and became a student. However, he was only a 9th rank official. This already showed the authority of the eldest brother. How can such a family be good after marrying over? Also, her mother-in-law, Madame Yen, is famous for being difficult to deal with. But what's the use of me saying it? Would she listen to me? Yang Chendong was still complaining when he suddenly asked in a somewhat angry tone, "Since you know that seventh sister isn't living well, then as fourth brother, why don't you care? Her parents are no longer here. Who are you waiting for to make the decision?" Yang Chendong's sudden anger stunned everyone in the main hall. The great Ming dynasty was like this. A married daughter was like spilled water. If her life wasn't good in her husband's house, it could only mean that her life wasn't good. How could there be anything for her family to worry about? Even if it was the emperor's younger sister, the princess, after marrying, she had to follow the chicken. There were also many examples of her suffering. So what if it was the imperial family? He didn't see them do anything about it either. Yang Duo was only the 7th daughter of the Yang family. Now that she married into the Wang family, she was a member of the Wang family and didn't have much to do with the Yang family. How could Yang care about this? These principles were understood by all adults. Even those who were illiterate were clear on this. However, Yang Chendong's questioning tone caused fourth brother Yang Yang's expression to become somewhat displeased. "So you're saying that it's my fault? Big brother and second brother also know about this matter. I don't see them caring about it. Also, if sixth brother can, then you should care about it for me to see. But don't say that I didn't warn you. If you really care about it, once it's reported to the authorities, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences. At that time, the one who will lose face will only be you." Enough. Since you don't dare to care, then don't say any sarcastic words. Later, sixth brother, I'll go care about it. Yang Chendong said with determination. He was someone from the future. If these rules were reasonable, he would naturally abide by them. But if they weren't, then sorry, to hell with it. Yang Chendong definitely had to care about it. With such strength, if he could ignore his own sister's suffering and couldn't even say a word, then what was the point of having such strength? What was the point of coming to Yang Chendong's body? Wouldn't that be letting down the heavens' favor to him? Sixth brother, you have to be careful. Don't be blinded by anger and do something wrong. Now that father isn't here, if something really happens, I'm afraid no one can help our Yang family. Fifth sister Yang Li and sixth sister Yang Qin both anxiously comforted him. They could see that their sixth brother was really angry this time. Yang Li regretted telling the truth. She thought that her sixth brother was educated and polite, so he should be cautious in doing things. She didn't expect him to have such a reckless personality. If she had known, she wouldn't have said it even if she was beaten to death. It's okay, fifth sister and sixth sister. I know what to do. Although Yang Chendong was a little angry, he wasn't unable to distinguish right from wrong. He knew that his sister was worried about him, so she said such words. Because of Yang Chendong's sudden change in attitude, and even questioned fourth brother Yang Yang, this made everyone's face become a little ugly. Originally, they were going to stay here for lunch, so everyone lost interest and found a reason to leave first. Leaving Yang Chendong alone in the main hall, his expression was very ugly. "Young master, what's wrong with you? Is there something that has made you angry? Anger is harmful to the body. You must be open-minded when something happens." Xiaoyin walked in. Just now it was the Yang family's people who were talking. She was just a maid, so of course, it wasn't good for her to stay there, so she didn't know what happened. "It's okay, Iner doesn't need to worry." Yang Chendong suppressed the anger in his heart and said to Xiaoyin with a smile. But then his tone changed and became extremely cold. He shouted outside the main hall, Tiger's Mane, get your ass in here for this young master. A figure suddenly appeared like a ghost. Tiger's Mane half knelt on the ground with a plop. Young master, please give your orders. Although he didn't know why the sixth young master was angry, Tiger's Mane felt a murderous aura. He had already prepared himself. Once the young master said that he wanted to kill someone, he absolutely wouldn't blink an eye. Go, investigate that person called Wang Go and his mother, Madame Yen. I want to know the current state of my seventh sister's life. Once you're done, report back immediately. If there's no news before nightfall, all members of the security bureau in the capital will be fined a year's salary and receive 10 strokes of the military rod. Yes. If there's no news before nightfall, Tiger's Mane will come see me with his head. He stood up and turned around. At this moment, Tiger's Mane hated that person called Wang Go to the core. Only then did Xiao Yi know that the young master was annoyed by the matter of the Yang family's seventh sister. She hurriedly got up and walked behind Yang Qindong. She lightly patted his shoulder and said softly, "Sixth young master, is seventh young miss unhappy?" "It's not unhappy, it's very bad." Do you think a woman's life is so bitter that she has to follow her husband's lead after marrying into a man's family, without the slightest bit of opposition? Moreover, she has to share a man with several other women, and she still has to smile happily. Can anyone really do that? Chapter 48. As Yang Qindong spoke, he thought about how in the modern society, men and women were said to be equal and women could hold up half the sky. But in reality, women were spoiled to the heavens. If things did not go well, they would be threatened with divorce. In some big cities, the divorce rate was higher than the marriage rate. Even so, women would still feel unbalanced and think that they were unlucky to not have met a good man. If they were allowed to come here, they would quickly reflect on themselves and realize how fortunate they were. Yang Qindong was still arguing for the women of the modern era, but Xiao Yin said matter-of-factly, "If you marry a chicken, follow the chicken. This is a natural thing. Women are born like this. They have to prioritize men. Men are their sky. Whatever they want us to do, we will do it. If we make a man angry, then it's our fault. The fault lies with us." Yang Qindong was speechless again. He realized that discussing women's rights with Xiao Yin was not going to work. Even if it was for their own good, after thousands of years of education, some things could not be changed so easily. Even if it was for their own good, it would take time for them to accept it. Forget it, forget it. Yang Qindong shook his head and gave up on the idea of reasoning with Xiao Yin. Perhaps no matter how things changed, there was one thing that would not change, and that was to not reason with women. Otherwise, the one who would be hurt would be the man. Tiger's Mane moved quickly. In just 4 hours he arrived at Yang Qindong's study. Then, some information about Wang Go was placed on the desk. Yang Qindong waved his hand and told Tiger's Mane to rest. He believed that he must have not eaten. After there was no one else around, he picked up the information and started reading. Wang Go from Nanjing came from an ordinary background. His ancestors had been farmers for generations. When it came to him, he was diligent in his studies and became a scholar. In addition, he had a dignified appearance. When a man reached the Tao, even his chickens and dogs rose to the heavens. His dog life was not bad. He entered the Hanlin Academy and became a student, a 9th-rank official. Then, when he entered the capital, Wang Go left his daughter who had served him for many years in the Nanjing countryside and married the 7th daughter of the Yang family, Yang Duo. For someone like Wang Go to be able to marry the daughter of the late minister of the Ministry of Works was a very fortunate thing. For this reason he was proud of himself for a long time. However, after marrying her, he realized that although his wife looked decent, she was just a flower vase. She did not know how to do any housework. Because of this matter, the relationship between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was very tense. At first, Wang Go would say a few good words for Yang Duo, but after a long time, he found that this woman had nothing good about her except for her good looks. In addition, the Yang family's influence was getting weaker and weaker. In the end, he began to dislike them. At first, he only scolded them a few times. Later on, there were punishments. Until now, he even took back the right to leave the house. In the beginning, Wang Go was still a little afraid because he knew that Yang Duo had 5 brothers and 5 sisters in the capital. If these people came to find him, he was afraid that it would not look good for him. However, after a long time, no one asked about it at all. He was completely relieved. He directly ordered Yang Duo around as if she was a maid. He found another average-looking concubine to accompany her. Normally, such a thing would not happen in the Great Ming Dynasty. But when they encountered such a thing, they could only endure it. If the family was strong enough, they might be able to influence it. If the family was weak, no one would care or ask about it. Even if the woman died one day, her family could only sigh and lament that her fate was not good. This was the state of the country. In the face of such a common phenomenon, it was impossible to change it with the strength of one or two people. Unfortunately, Yang Duo was Yang Qindong's sister. Although their relationship wasn't very good, Yang Duo was Yang Qindong's sister. In the past, Yang Qindong would not care about seven sisters' business. However, it was impossible for the current sixth young master to do so. Not to mention that he had already bragged in front of his brothers and sisters. He was the sixth young master of the Yang family. He would not allow others to bully the Yang family. He had been thinking about how to make a commotion in the capital. Now it seemed that the breakthrough was in front of him. Early the next morning, Yang Qindong did not do morning exercises. He hurriedly ate breakfast with Tiger's Mane and rode the new steward Yang Ningbei's horse to the capital. Yang Qindong and Bai Yunfei only took less than an hour to cover the distance of 15 miles. Dismounting from his horse, the sixth young master looked at the Yongding gate above his head and said firmly, "Tiger's Mane, lead the way." After entering the Yongding gate and passing through Lilikeng, they arrived at a house facing the street. The two words Wang Residence on the gate were very obvious. Compared to the small houses next to it, it was like a crane in a flock of chickens. "Young master, this is the place. Should I go and knock on the door?" Tiger's Mane dismounted and walked in front of Yang Qindong to ask for instructions. "What are you knocking for? Smash it open." Yang Qindong's eyes were burning with anger. This was the Wang residence where his seventh sister had married, and also Wang Go's residence. Yesterday, Tiger's Mane found out that Wang Go was off work today and was at home. This was the best time to deal with him. Yes. After yesterday's investigation, Tiger's Mane found out what had happened to the seventh young mistress. As the saying goes, if the master is humiliated, the servant will die. Of course, he understood the sixth young master's anger. After agreeing, he turned around and arrived in front of the two wooden doors. With a light shout, he sent Qi into his dantian. Then he suddenly pushed his palms forward. The seemingly sturdy door fell to the ground with a loud bang, raising a cloud of dust. Early in the morning, the sudden loud bang attracted the attention of the people on the street. Many pairs of eyes involuntarily looked in this direction. They were confused and did not understand what was going on. Could it be that a thief had appeared? But this was broad daylight, no bad person would have the guts to do this. The door was pushed open and Yang Qindong walked in with a horsewhip in his hand. Behind him was Tiger's Mane, who also had an aggressive look on his face. In the courtyard of the Wang residence, a man who looked like a scholar was standing there washing his face. Beside him, a woman with an extraordinary temperament but an extremely gloomy expression was standing there with a handkerchief in her hand. She seemed to be waiting to wipe the man's face. After a loud bang, the two people's attention was completely drawn to it. When the dust settled, a man in a green robe appeared in their sight. Sixth brother. When she saw the person, the woman holding the towel was first stunned, then her face became filled with panic. She then lowered her head and turned to leave. "Wait." The man beside her reached out and grabbed her arm. "What did you just say? Do you know this person?" Pointing at Yang Qindong who was striding over, Wang Go's face showed a vicious expression. Smashing someone's door was no different from slapping someone's face. The Wang residence's door being smashed early in the morning was equivalent to the Wang family's face being slapped. As such, how could Wang Go let it go? Seeing Yang Duo's expression, how could he not understand that this person had something to do with her? "He's mine." Yang Duo wanted to deny it, but when she thought about how Wang Go and his mother would bully her if she lied, she became nervous. She stuttered for a long time and couldn't make herself clear. Using this time, Yang Qindong had already walked in front of Wang Go. When he saw that this person was grabbing Sixth Sister's arm, his expression became even colder. "You're Wang Go?" Even though he had guessed something and was about to make a move, he still had to make sure of the person's identity. "This official is Wang Go. May I ask who you are?" Wang Go was not afraid of Yang Qindong because he was in his own courtyard. Seeing that the other party was not very old, he felt even more confident. He should be a wastrel or a helper that the Yang family had found. Regardless, he had the protection of an official. Unless the other party's background was very big, who would dare to make a move on his own? Raising his head, Wang Go wanted to use his power to intimidate. However, before he could finish speaking, a large palm was already in front of his face. In his eyes it was infinitely enlarged. Then there was a crisp pa sound, and the clean sound of a slap rang out. Yang Chendong used a lot of strength in this slap. It was guaranteed that the redness and swelling would not subside within half a month. This was also because he was really angry and was really angry. After taking the slap, Wang Go only felt stars before his eyes. There was a golden light in front of him, and then there was an intense pain on his face. It seemed that something had fallen from his mouth. He instinctively reached out to catch it, and 3 teeth fell into his hand with blood. At that moment he was so scared that he was about to cry. He muttered, "It's bleeding. My teeth fell out." As a person who only knew how to read books, a gentleman used his mouth and not his fists. When had he ever seen someone like Yang Chendong who hit without saying anything? Not to mention that he was not prepared. Even if he was prepared, seeing blood would cause his mind to be in chaos. Seeing her husband being hit by her younger brother, Yang Duo first cried out and covered her mouth. Then her face turned pale. She went forward and said in panic, "Sixth brother, how can you hurt him? He is an official. Before anyone notices, you should leave quickly." As she spoke, Yang Duo used all her strength to push Yang Chendong's body, wanting him to leave quickly. Who is it? Who dares to cause trouble in the Wang family? A lion's roar suddenly resounded in the courtyard. Then a fat woman ran out from the backyard. She looked like she could cause the earth to shake just by walking on the ground. Chapter 49. When the old woman came to the front of the courtyard and saw Wang Go's soulless appearance and the 3 bloody teeth in his hand, she immediately screamed like an ignited firecracker. Then she revealed a ruthless expression. "Thief, I'll fight it out with you." The old woman had some courage. As she spoke, she bumped her head over. It was clear that she wanted to perish together with the intruders. Scram. Tiger's mane had long been itching for a fight. However, without the 6th young master's order, he didn't dare to make a move. Now that the old woman had rushed over, how could he let the 6th young master do something like beating a woman? He stepped forward, lifted his leg and kicked. Under the powerful force, the old woman flew out with a plop. She flew a full 3 to 4 meters before landing on the ground. Tiger's mane didn't use too much strength in this kick. He also knew that today's matter was mainly to teach a lesson. He couldn't kill, otherwise the trouble wouldn't be small. But even so, this kick made Wang Go's mother, Lady Yen, look extremely pained. After landing on the ground, she howled like a pig being slaughtered. I killed someone. Sitting on the ground, Lady Yen endured the great pain from her body. Her hands continuously slapped the ground, completely looking like a shrew. You still dare to scream? Whip her again. Yang Chendong looked at Lady Yen with disgust. Just now, when Yang Duo accidentally grabbed his arm, he saw that 6th sister's jade-like arm, which was originally as white as a lotus root, was now covered in bruises. If he guessed correctly, these should be marks left behind by forceful pinching. And most of them should be this old woman's doing. Even so, how could Yang Chendong spare her? He just whipped her again. If he could, he even wanted to directly kill her to vent his anger. Don't. Seeing that 6th brother wanted to hit her mother-in-law, Yang Duo's originally pale face became even more bloodless. She was really frightened. Tiger's mane only listened to the 6th young master and had to carry out his orders. Without saying another word, he took 2 steps forward and lashed out with his horse whip, striking Lady Yan's face. A bloody gash ran from her forehead to her chin. It was very obvious. Then blood flowed out from the wound. The pain of this whip far exceeded the strength of the previous kick. Yen Shi, who was in so much pain that her mouth twitched, didn't dare to cry out. However, when her hand touched the wound and touched the dark red blood, her expression changed greatly. She was about to faint in a flash. You're not allowed to faint. Otherwise I'll beat you awake. Yang Chendong only beat them up as a means. His real purpose was to teach them to treat his own sister better. Before that, no one should even think about fainting or playing dumb. As expected, Lady Yen, whose head was about to tilt when she heard Yang Chendong's words, was immediately energized. She forced herself not to fall to the ground. It was said that evil people needed to be dealt with by evil people. These words sometimes made sense. Yang Chendong's series of actions when he entered the courtyard really scared Wang Go and Lady Yen. Seeing the 2 of them calm down and looking at him with panicked eyes, Yang Chendong coldly snorted and said, "Listen well. This young master is Yang Chendong. I am the 6th young master of the Yang clan. Yang Duo is my sister. You actually dared to bully her. This is disrespect to our Yang clan. Today I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of my deceased parents." If you dare to treat my sister like this in the future, then next time, it won't be as simple as teaching you a lesson. Of course you can choose not to believe me. However, I want to say that the consequences of trying are not something you can bear. After all, you only have one life. After coldly throwing down these words, Yang Qindong's expression turned. He looked at the trembling young duo with a slightly more amiable expression. Seventh older sister, they won't dare to treat you like this in the future. Otherwise, younger brother will beat them up again. Also, if seventh older sister doesn't want to live with him anymore, just tell younger brother. I'll have him divorce you. Harmonious separation meant divorce. This meant that both parties were willing. This way, if the woman wanted to marry in the future, her reputation wouldn't be damaged. It was fundamentally different from being a divorced wife. Originally, Yang Qindong wanted to directly take seventh older sister and leave. However, Qiaoyin said last night that a person's path had to be chosen by themselves. No one could make decisions for others. If the sixth young master really wanted to forcefully bring seventh young lady back, it was very likely that he would force a person to death. Yang Qindong didn't doubt the credibility of these words at all. This was because he knew that it was very likely to be the truth. This meant that the choice was in Yang Duo's hands. Sixth younger brother. At this moment, Yang Duo's eyes were already filled with tears. For so many years she had suffered so much, but no one in the Yang family cared about her. She knew that her family must have their own difficulties. After her parents passed away, the Yang family was already unable to protect themselves. Who could stand up for her? Who would stand up for her? But today sixth younger brother came. Not only did he come, but he also helped her vent her anger. At this moment she felt so satisfied and happy. At this point, even if she died immediately, it would be worth it. At the same time, she was also very worried that sixth younger brother would be involved in a lawsuit because of this matter. After all, Wang Go was also an official. Once reported, he would definitely be held responsible. Perhaps if she stayed and apologized properly, the Wang family would be less angry and sixth younger brother would be less guilty. Therefore she couldn't leave. Not only could she not leave, but she also had to persuade Yang Qindong to leave quickly. With such a big commotion here, the people from the 5 cities warden's office should be here soon. At that time, if she was caught, she wouldn't be able to leave even if she wanted to. At this moment, Yang Duo made a decision and said with incomparable certainty, "Sixth elder brother, you should leave quickly. Seventh elder sister thanks you for helping me vent my anger and letting me know that I am still a Yang family member. But you really caused trouble by hitting people. Leave quickly, leave this place. With father's connections in the past, he might be able to give you a lighter sentence." Yang Duo's words were sincere. At this time she was still thinking about Yang Qindong, which made him very touched. "It's okay, seventh elder sister, don't worry. If they want to sue, then let them. I will be fine. You have to believe in your sixth younger brother. Also, I will send people here to gather information. If something happens to seventh elder sister, I will let everyone in the Wang family die with her. At that time your sixth younger brother will really be doomed. If you want this result, then go ahead and seek death. Otherwise, stay here and your days will get better." Yang Qindong was very worried that seventh elder sister would do something that she would regret after he left, so he could only use this reason to threaten her. He believed that if he said this, even if it was for him, seventh elder sister would choose to live first and see the situation first. Hearing her sixth younger brother say that if something happened to her, the Wang family would be buried with her, at this moment she really believed it. She only felt that after not seeing him for a few years, her sixth younger brother had completely changed. He had changed so much that she couldn't recognize him. Naturally, she couldn't tell if he was lying to her. But what if it was true? She didn't dare to try. The consequences would be that after she died, she wouldn't be able to live peacefully and wouldn't be able to see her parents in the underworld. Yang Duo hesitated. Yang Qindong saw this and felt confident. He knew that his seventh elder sister wouldn't do anything stupid. He immediately smiled and said, "Okay, seventh elder sister, sixth younger brother still has things to do. See you later." After speaking, Yang Qindong didn't look at Wang Go and Lady Yan, who were still stunned on the ground. He just turned around and walked out with Tiger's mane. He believed that the two of them must have heard his words. Before they took him down, they wouldn't have the courage to make a move on seventh elder sister because the consequences were not something they could bear. After beating them up and sending out the warning, Yang Qindong felt a burst of relief. After leaving the Wang residence, he saw the people of the 5 cities warden's office in the distance. They were wearing mandarin duck jackets and rushing over. He first snorted and then said to Tiger's Mane, "Immediately return to the Yang family village and do as the young master instructed." "Young master, rest assured." "Young master, be careful." Tiger's Mane promised and got on his horse and left first. Yang Qindong was left standing by his horse, waiting for the people of the 5 cities warden's office to come to his side and surround him. However, what was unknown to everyone was that the captain of the first group of guards, Chiu Vi, was watching from a distance with his 9 brothers. It was guaranteed that if anyone tried to harm the 6th young master, they would quickly take action and stabilize the situation. "The people in the courtyard were injured by you. What is your identity? What do you do? What is your name?" The leader of the group, Shao Qi, glanced at the situation in the courtyard and asked Yang Qindong with a serious expression. "Stop talking nonsense. Tell this young master where the drum of hearing is." Yang Qindong ignored Shao Qi's question and said in a rhetorical tone, "Drum of hearing? What do you want to do?" Shao Qi was puzzled. The drum of hearing was a drum that was hung outside the imperial court during the feudal era in China. It was used for people who had grievances or urgent cases to beat the drum and report to the court. Zhu Yuanzhang, the founder of the Ming Dynasty, also set up the drum of hearing and assigned people to manage it. Once there was a grievance, the emperor would personally handle it. If any officials tried to stop the grievances, they would be severely punished. Yang Qindong asking where the drum of hearing was clearly an important matter. How could a mere Shao Qi dare to stop him? "What do I want to do? Do you think you have the right to ask? Let me tell you, hurry up and lead the way. Otherwise the consequences are not something you can bear." Yang Qindong's calm and confident expression frightened Shao Qi. "Okay, I'll bring you there." Although Shao Qi didn't understand the situation, he knew that if the person in front of him really wanted to beat the drum of hearing, he really couldn't stop him. Otherwise, not only him but his entire family would be in trouble. After weighing the pros and cons, Shao Qi thought that Yang Qindong was already in his grasp and couldn't escape. Since that was the case, there was no harm in following him to take a look. Thus he led the way. The soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office stood on both sides of Yang Qindong, as if they were protecting him and preventing him from escaping. Chapter 50. On the streets, this scene became a common sight. Many people who didn't know what was going on were wondering what was going on when they saw someone being escorted by soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office heading toward the imperial city. What was the identity of this young master? Yang Qindong didn't realize that he was committing a crime. As he walked through the streets of the capital, he looked left and right. This was the capital of the great Ming Dynasty. How fortunate was he to be able to enter the capital and observe it closely. The group didn't travel very slowly. In just an hour, they arrived at the drum outside the right gate of Chang'an. When a drum that was half the height of a person appeared in front of him, Yang Qindong dismounted from his horse and strode to the drum. Dong dong dong, he struck the drum 3 times in a row. The sound of the drum immediately spread far and wide and could be heard clearly even in the nearby imperial city. The flag officer originally wanted to see if Yang Qindong really dared to strike the drum. Unexpectedly, the other party didn't even hesitate before striking the drum. At that moment, the flag officer retreated a few steps. He had finally met a ruthless person today. However, this was the first time he had encountered a situation where the perpetrator wanted to cry out for justice. In the main hall of the imperial palace, a court session was underway. The Minister of War, Kuang Yi, was reporting on the case of Deng Maoqi's rebellion in Fujian. "Reporting to your Majesty, Deng Maoqi calls himself the Flattening King, and has already conquered more than 20 counties in Fujian. Most of the government's vaults have been plundered, and everything inside has been looted. Currently he is planning to move towards Zhejiang. This subject is certain that your Majesty will send out an order to suppress the bandits." As the Minister of War, he hadn't been in a good mood recently. He had originally thought that Deng Maoqi was just a country bumpkin who had brought some commoners to cause trouble. All he needed to do was to mobilize the soldiers from the nearby guard posts. However, he had never imagined that the county government would be attacked several times in a row, causing the defensive line to collapse. This caused Deng Maoqi's momentum to grow, and he seemed to be unstoppable. Of course, Kuang Yi didn't know that this was the doing of Lung Song's soldiers. He followed the ideology of robbing as many people as he could and used Deng Maoqi's name to take down several important counties. As a result, the defensive line that the soldiers had set up was broken, causing the flames of war to burn even more fiercely. They're just a bunch of foolish commoners. How could they cause such a huge incident? Zhu Qizhen, the lofty hero sect's Zhu Qizhen, who was dressed in a golden dragon robe, was very puzzled. As he spoke, he looked at ceremony supervisor Wang Zhen, who was standing to the side. Wang Zhen's ability to read people's expressions was outstanding. After noticing Ying Zong's gaze, he asked, "Minister Xie, did the nearby guards fail to dispatch troops and thus delay the opportunity?" "No, they did their best. Unfortunately, the bandits were too powerful and could not be stopped." Kuang Yi did not show the slightest disrespect just because Wang Zhen was the one asking the question. In fact, in the imperial court, it was not uncommon for Wang Zhen to ask questions on behalf of the emperor. As time passed, everyone naturally got used to it. Kuang Yi and Wang Zhen had always minded their own business. Even if their relationship wasn't good, it wasn't bad either. This ceremony supervisor didn't have any intention of framing Wang Zhen. Furthermore, he knew that internal chaos and instability in the imperial court was a taboo for the country. As such, he didn't dare to do anything at this time. He turned around and looked at Ying Zong. "Emperor, the foolish commoners have been tempted and don't believe in the emperor's authority. In my opinion, we should send troops to suppress the bandits." "Good. Since Sir also has the same idea, send Censor Zhang Kai, Marquis Ningyang Qinmao, Liang Kuei, Qinyu, and the others to lead 20,000 soldiers from the capital and 27,000 soldiers from Jiangsu and Zhejiang. Use the Mongolian and Hui elites to suppress them." Ying Zong trusted Wang Zhen. Since he had said so, he didn't hesitate and sent out an imperial edict. The emperor is wise. Seeing that Ying Zong had decided to send troops, all the officials knelt on the ground and praised him. Logically speaking, since things had reached this stage, Ying Zong should have shown that he was a wise emperor and said, "Everyone is happy." In reality, he was about to say that, but suddenly 3 drum beats rang out. Even after entering the imperial court, they could still hear it clearly. This is the drum beating." Some of the more knowledgeable officials immediately recognized the origin of the sound. Everyone knew that there had to be something important to beat the drum to hear the drum. As such, they hadn't heard the sound of the drum for many years. However, today it suddenly rang out, causing everyone's expression to tremble. They all wondered if something big had happened. Could it be that there was a rebellion? The officials all had faces of worry and panic. Only Ying Zong's face was filled with joy. He had been the emperor for 13 years and had seen all kinds of things in the imperial court. However, this was the first time he had heard the sound of the drum. He couldn't help but be interested. "Teacher, quickly send someone to see who is beating the drum. Bring that person over for me to see." Since the emperor had spoken, Wang Zhen didn't dare to disobey. He gave a look to one of his eunuchs and someone immediately rushed over. The pitiful group of old officials were still kneeling on the ground. Without an imperial decree, they didn't dare to stand up. In front of the drum beating, the 5 cities warden's office and the embroidered uniform guards had surrounded Yang Qindong, who was wearing a long blue robe. The only difference was that Yang Qindong, who was surrounded, had a relaxed expression. From time to time, he would reach out to touch the edge of the drum beating, as if he wanted to see what material it was made of. On the other hand, the soldiers surrounding him were all very nervous. Town supervisor Hu Changning was among the crowd. It was also a coincidence that he was on duty today. Originally, his attention was focused on the imperial court because no one knew what might happen. Perhaps some blind official would anger the emperor and be dragged out. At that time, the embroidered uniform guards would have to do the work. Things like this had often happened in the past. Today it was the complete opposite. Things didn't happen in the imperial palace, but in front of the drum beating. As soon as he heard the sound of the drum, he secretly knew that something bad had happened. He quickly rushed over with a few of his subordinates. Among them were the 2 subordinates that he had brought to Jianningfu last time. At this time, the 2 of them had already recognized Yang Qindong. Their faces were full of admiration. Although they didn't say anything, it was clear from their eyes that they admired the 6th young master's courage. Yang Qindong naturally recognized Hu Changning and the others. He immediately thought of a plan. Today's matter was destined to be of great merit. Since it was a favor at no cost, of course it would be best to give it to someone who was full of goodwill. "Lord Hu, this official greets you." Yang Qindong stepped forward and cupped his hands in greeting in front of Hu Changning. "Governor Yang Qindong greets you." Hu Changning couldn't figure out what Yang Qindong wanted to do. Could it be that he knew that he had caused trouble and wanted to worm his way into being friends? He had just heard from the flag officer of the 5 cities warden's office that this person was so daring that he went to Wang Go's house in broad daylight and beat him up. The imperial court had long made it clear that only the imperial power could punish an official. If anyone acted without permission, no matter what reason they had, they would be severely punished. This also meant that Yang Qindong was now a criminal official. What benefits would there be to be on good terms with such a person? If it were someone else, Hu Changning would definitely speak righteously and speak in a businesslike manner. After all, who would want to have any relationship with a criminal official? But Yang Qindong was not someone else. Others might not know his daughter's thoughts, but how could Hu Changning not know? If Hu Yan knew that the sixth young master had appeared in front of her father, but her father had ignored him and sent him to the imperial prison according to official business, who knew how long she would ignore him? If that was the case, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Of course, the most important thing was that Hu Changning did not think that Yang Qindong would do such a reckless thing. The two of them had interacted before, and the feeling that this person gave him was definitely not as impetuous as other young people. Now that Yang Qindong had taken the initiative to greet him, he also wanted to know what had happened. At the very least, if he could help, he would reach out to help. Even if it was out of respect for the old Yang Rong, this was something that should be done. Governor Yang, do you know that you have committed a serious crime today? First, you beat up an official of the imperial court and then you beat the drum. What exactly do you want to do? When the two of them walked together, Hu Changning lowered his voice and questioned with a displeased expression. Ah, Lord Hu, everything is wrongly accused. Yang Qindong's expression was one of crying injustice, as if he was the victim. What exactly is going on? Speak truthfully. Hu Changning was also deceived by this expression. Of course, this was because he still did not understand the sixth young master. Once he interacted with him more in the future, he would understand what kind of person this person was. In the future, when he worked with him, he would be more careful. Yes, I do not dare to deceive Lord Hu. The matter is like this. Yang Qindong's honest appearance was somewhat pitiful. This lowly official arrived at the capital yesterday and went directly to the Yang family manor 15 li south of the city. As soon as I entered the manor, I did not care about the fatigue of the carriage and immediately went to the manor. When I saw this auspicious event, I could not help but want to report it to His Majesty and the imperial court. However, because the city gates were already closed, I could not enter, so I had no choice but to stay in the manor and wait for daybreak. As such, I tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep. As soon as the sun rose, I rode into the city. As he spoke, Yang Qindong's body swayed as if he really did not have a good rest. As he fell, he was leaning towards Hu Xiangning's side. The honest lord Hu reflexively reached out his hand to support him, and caught him in the act. Leaning on Hu Changning's shoulder, Yang Qindong acted as if he was feeling better and continued. After entering the city, this lowly official realized that as a mere 9th-level official, how could I have the opportunity to meet His Majesty? While thinking with furrowed brows, I unknowingly arrived outside Lilikang. Coincidentally, I saw Seventh Sister here. I originally wanted to go forward and ask where the drum of hearing was. This was probably the only way for this lowly official to meet His Majesty. Who would have thought that my seventh brother-in-law would not ask about right and wrong and indiscriminately try to remove me from my post? If it was any other time, this lowly official would have tolerated it. Who told him to be my seventh brother-in-law? However, when I remembered that I still had an important matter to report to the emperor, in a moment of desperation, I pushed Wang Go with the back of my hand. Unexpectedly, his body was actually so weak that he fell after being pushed by me. In his anger and shame, he wanted to fight me with his life. At that time, his eyes were all red. This lowly official saw that he had clearly gone mad and slapped him, wanting to wake him up. However, who would have thought that Wang Go's mother would arrive at the same time and misunderstand this lowly official and try to fight me with her? Her eyes were also red. In order to protect this lowly official's servant raised his hand and gave her a horsewhip, waking her up. Chapter 51. The story continued. According to Yang Qindong, his actions were completely passive, forced and helpless. He was the biggest victim. Yang Qindong paid attention to Hu Xiangning's expression and found that he was listening seriously. He smiled and continued, after waking the woman up, this lowly official wanted to go up and apologize. Who would have thought that the soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office would arrive? Only then did this lowly official remember that there was something important to do. I immediately asked the soldiers where the drum was. Lord Hu can go and ask. That is what happened. Yang Qindong's confidence in the last sentence was also because he had said so much. Only this sentence was true, and it could stand up to anyone's investigation. Hu Xiangning allowed Yang Qindong to lean on him and listen carefully. When there was no more movement, he made an inference about the entire matter and concluded that the words were not true. What kind of coincidence was it that he came to Seven Sisters' door? The capital was so big, how could there be such a coincidence? It must have been premeditated long ago. But the crux of the matter was not here, but the auspicious matter that Yang Qindong spoke of. What kind of matter could make the sixth young master of the Yang family so fearless and dare to openly beat up an official of the court? Hu Jiangning still remembered Beta Persei's skills very clearly. If Yang Qindong only wanted to take revenge on Wang Go for mistreating his seventh sister, he only needed to send this person in the middle of the night. That way no one would know. But he did not. Instead he chose to do it openly, choosing to let everyone know. Could it be that Yang Qindong did not understand the laws of the great Ming dynasty? Hu Jiangning did not believe this. How could such a smart person not know something that even the common people knew? But he still did it. It could only be said that he was very confident in his heart. But what was this confidence? Hu Jiangning could not think of it, let alone guess. He tilted his head to look at Yang Qindong, wanting to ask him clearly. Lord Hu, you don't need to ask me. This lowly official wouldn't dare to boast about such an auspicious item. Now, you only need to go to the palace and tell His Majesty the memorials that this official has just told you. When the time comes, you will naturally have a share of the credit. Yang Qindong chuckled. It was at this moment that he noticed a few eunuchs approaching from the corner of his eye. He hurriedly lowered his head and said, Lord Hu, please go quickly. If the eunuchs snatch the credit at night, it won't be good. Hu Jiangning naturally noticed the eunuch coming from afar and understood the meaning of Yang Qindong's words. He nodded and said, All right, I will believe you this time. But remember, if you dare to lie to me, I will not let you off easily. Don't worry, Yang Qindong replied with a grin as he patted Hu Jiangning's shoulder. No matter what, Hu Jiangning was a man in his 40s. To be patted on the shoulder by a young man who was not even 20 years old, he couldn't help but feel angry. He wanted to vent his anger. Lord Hu, please go quickly. Otherwise there won't be time for you to perform meritorious deeds. Yang Qindong had already expected this outcome and urged him repeatedly. As expected, once he said this, Hu Jiangning could only suppress the idea of settling the score with Yang Qindong. He turned around and quickly rushed into the palace. But on the way he was still thinking that if Yang Qindong dared to trick him, he would not let him off easily. But on the other hand, there was no need for him to trick him. After all, he had gone to Jianing to pay respects to old Master Yang and old Madam Yang. Just based on this, there was no need for him to trick him. Before the beating of the drum, Hu Jiangning had just left when 3 eunuchs came over. The leader of the eunuchs held a horsetail whisk in his hand, his face pale. Before the eunuchs could steady themselves, a hoarse voice sounded. Who beat the drum? In reply to eunuch, it was this official, Governor Yang Qindong of Jianing Prefecture. Although he was unwilling, the sixth young master still bowed slightly, cupped his hands and bowed. Then he straightened his back. Why did you beat the drum? Is there a grievance? The eunuch instinctively thought that the person who beat the drum had been wronged, and it should be quite a big grievance. Otherwise, why would he dare to do such a big thing? No. Yang Qindong shook his head. Then what is it? The eunuch was somewhat displeased. He was unhappy that Yang Qindong was not tactful. In his opinion, since he was here, the other party should take the initiative to answer the question, instead of answering every time he asked a question. How could this eunuch know that Yang Qindong did not have a good impression of these eunuchs? Who knew how many loyal and wise officials had been ruined by these eunuchs? Just now, he bowed because he was forced by the situation. It was already the biggest concession he could make. Now, how could he give the other party too much face? Of course it's a big matter, and such a big matter can only be told to the current emperor. Yang Qindong straightened his neck, looking like he would not speak until he saw the main person. How dare you? Seeing that Yang Qindong was so arrogant and still acting like this in front of the eunuch leader glared and said angrily. Yang Qindong was not frightened by the eunuch's words at all. Instead, he shook his head and said, I have already asked Sir Hu Jiangning to report this matter to the emperor and the officials. If this eunuch feels that his status is high enough and stable enough to be higher than Eunuch Wang, then you can arrest this official and put me in prison. However, you must think clearly about the consequences. The eunuch was not afraid of Yang Qindong's threats at all. He was a eunuch and had a powerful group of eunuchs as his backing. He was not afraid of things. However, the mention of Eunuch Wang had truly frightened him. Eunuchs were not afraid of civil and military officials because they all had to listen to the emperor. However, they were afraid of eunuchs. This was because the methods of these eunuchs could often get things done without imperial authority. This was what made them terrifying. Moreover, the surname Wang was a common surname. There were countless eunuch Wangs in the palace. If one of them was in power, wouldn't he be at a disadvantage? Thinking that it was better to be safe than sorry, the eunuch spoke with some caution. May I know who this eunuch Wang you are talking about is? Of course it's eunuch Wang of the ceremony directorate. Yang Qindong knew that the eunuch would ask this question and had been waiting for it. When he spoke of this, he did not even pant. After all, Yang Qindong still had 20% of Wang Zhen's shares in the company. That was a lot of money. As long as he used his name, it should be fine. A person's reputation was like the shadow of a tree. When Wang Zhen's name was reported, the eunuch's expression changed as he suddenly thought of something. What did this official say you were called? This official is Yang Qindong, governor of Jianing Prefecture. Oh, so it's 6th young master. So it's official Yang. Sorry for the disrespect. In the blink of an eye, the eunuch's expression changed again and again. He went from being furious to smiling like a flower. This speed of change was enough for him to be an actor and had the potential to become a superstar. It was obvious that the eunuch had already remembered Yang Qindong's identity after a short while. During this period of time in the palace, he had heard a lot about the 6th young master. The 3 mirrors in the palace were all his methods. It was just that because Jianing was too far away from the capital, no one thought about it for a while. Now that he knew Yang Qindong's identity, the eunuch's attitude immediately changed, and his face was full of smiles. Official Yang, may I know why you are beating the drum today? Since the eunuch's attitude had changed, Yang Qindong did not put on airs. He immediately moved his head closer and whispered, "Something good." Something good? The eunuch leader asked in surprise. Yes, something very good. I'll have to trouble you to lead the way. Yang Qindong returned to his smiling self. As he spoke, he handed over a bag of things. Out of habit, the eunuch leader reached out to take it and measured it with his hand. However, he felt that it was not heavy at all. His face could not help but tense up again. If it was not silver, then what was it? Before the eunuch leader could ask anything, Yang Qindong took the initiative to say, "This is called a diaper. It can be used to clean the crotch area and ensure that no foreign matter will come out at any time. Oh yes, this is a one-time use item. It won't be used for long. If you need it in the future, you can send someone to get it from me. But may I know your name?" Hearing that it was a cleansing item, the eunuch leader was first shocked, then delighted. It was not for any other reason. It was because eunuchs did not have that thing. It was often difficult for them to resist the urge to defecate, and a strange smell would come out. Usually it was fine, but once they worked in front of the emperor would feel it and loathe them. Often they would lose their lives. Now that there was something that could help solve this problem, how could he not be delighted? Our ceremony supervisor is Mao Mu. His position is low and he only occasionally works in front of the emperor. Oh yes, does official Yang's item really have a miraculous effect? Of course. Eunuch Mao, feel free to use it. If I deceive you, you can make things difficult for me afterwards, Yang Qindong said confidently. He had asked Zhou Hua's garment factory to make this item. It had been used on dozens of infants. It had no problem covering their bowels, let alone a lowly eunuch. After knowing that Mao Mu was the ceremony supervisor, Yang Qindong wanted to make friends with him. According to the ceremony supervisor system, besides Wang Zhen, there was also the admiral, head seal, pen keeper, and finally the ceremony supervisor. However, the lower the rank, the easier it was to make friends with him. If they really became friends, it would be like having a spy in the palace. It would make many things more convenient in the future. The man was in love and the woman was in love. Yang Qindong and Mao Mu both wanted to make friends with each other, so the two of them chatted enthusiastically. Yang Qindong even suggested to Mao Mu that he use the diapers first. If the effect was good, he could send someone to the Yang clan manor to get it. Afterwards, he could give it to eunuch Wang Zhen and a few other eunuchs. It would be a great service. Chapter 52. Mao Mu was delighted to hear this. Although he held a post in the ceremony directorate, there was still a gap of several levels between them. Wang Zhen was such a lofty figure that it was not up to him to offer filial piety. Even if he had the chance, he would not be able to offer anything good. But with Yang Qindong's support, things were completely different. With this good thing, currying favor and improving their relationship was just a matter of minutes. It only took a short while for them to go from being unhappy to now being as close as one. At this moment, Mao Mu was pulling Yang Qindong toward the imperial palace. In the imperial court, Hu Zhangning was kneeling on the ground repeating Yang Qindong's words. Governor Yang said that he accidentally came to Lilikang and coincidentally saw seventh sister of his family here. He wanted to ask where the drum of hearing was and use this method to meet his majesty. But who would have thought that his seventh brother-in-law would not ask about right and wrong, and indiscriminately beat him up? Governor Yang had no choice but to retaliate. Hu Jiangning was still speaking, but the faces of all the officials in the imperial court were filled with discomfort. What coincidence! What coincidence! That was only enough to fool a 3-year-old child. Which of the people standing here was not a shrewd person? Who did not know the secret behind this? Thinking about how Yang Qindong had only been in the capital for 2 days, on his first day in the capital, he had actually beaten up an official. Speaking of which, he was truly a strange person. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was young and frivolous. At this time, the officials had already stood up. They stood there holding back their laughter as they listened to Hu Jiangning's absurd story. Almost everyone knew that all of this was done intentionally by Yang Qindong. But there was only one person who listened with great interest, Zhu Qizhen of the Ying sect. He was only a young man who had just turned 20 years old. He was able to become the current emperor not because of his great ability, but because of his good fortune. He had a good father and a good family background. That was why he was able to inherit all of this, including the emperor's throne. How much experience did he have? Zhu Qizhen, who rarely left the palace, was not much different from a child. What he knew was only what the officials said. In the past, it was all about the world being peaceful, the people being in good health and cheering loudly. Or there were foolish people who rebelled under the influence of bad people, but as long as the imperial army arrived, it would be instantly quelled, and the people could once again live a happy life. Occasionally, some officials would be sentenced to prison for their crimes, but it was only written in writing. It didn't matter whether it was read or heard, it didn't arouse any interest. How could it be as interesting as Hu Jiangning said? Yang Qindong was a master storyteller. The story of him beating up seventh brother-in-law seemed to have become a wonderful story after being told by him. It was just that he was the good guy and Wang Go was the bad guy. Ying Zong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, couldn't help but nod his head. Even after Hu Jiangning closed his mouth, he still asked, "Beloved minister, what's next?" Hu Jiangning's mouth was dry and his tongue was dry. He had just stopped talking when the emperor suddenly asked this question. "I asked you what's next? What happened to that Wang Go and his mother? Did they fight with Magistrate Yang again? Hurry up and tell me." Ying Zong asked with great interest. When these words were said, the officials were silent. They only remembered now that their emperor was not very old and was at the age where he liked to play. Hu Jiangning, who was kneeling on the ground, was first confused by this question. Then he heard a light cough. He couldn't be more familiar with it and knew that it was his father, Hu Kuang, reminding him. He immediately kowtowed to the ground and said, replying to the emperor, Magistrate Yang was concerned about this matter and did not tangle with Wang Go's family. Instead, he used the arrival of the 5 cities warden's office to ask where the drums were. Then the sound of the drums was heard. That's it? Ying Zong clearly didn't like this kind of ending. However, when he noticed that the other officials, including his teacher, Wang Zhen, all had stupefied expressions, he remembered that this was the imperial court and not his teacher telling him a story in private. He straightened his body and said, Magistrate Yang wanted to present a sign of good fortune. For this, he did not care about the fatigue of traveling. His actions are praiseworthy. As for the matter of accidentally entering Wang Go's family, it is indeed a matter of fate. I don't think there is any need to look into it. The emperor is wise. Immediately, the crowd kneeled on the ground again and shouted, Long live the emperor. Who was Wang Go? Probably not many people in the imperial court knew. Although Yang Qindong was also young, his name was already well known. Last time, Wang Zhen had even said good things about him. Furthermore, he had been recommended by the Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhi. How many people didn't know about him? Not to mention, the reason why Yang Qindong dared to sound the drums was probably because something good was going to happen. At this time, who would argue with the 6th young master? Most of them were interested in the so-called good fortune. If a small Hanlin Academy official was beaten, then so be it. Fortunately, it was an official beating an official and not a commoner beating an official. This was not considered a slap to the faces of the officials. Seeing the crowd praise the emperor, Ying Zong's mood was also good. He continued, Beloved official who has done a meritorious service by investigating the situation and should be rewarded. When Magistrate Yang enters the main hall and speaks of the good fortune, he will be rewarded. Come, summon Yang Qindong into the main hall. The emperor is wise. "Thank you, your majesty." Hu Changning kowtowed again. He was very happy. This Yang Qindong did not trick him. When he said that he had done a meritorious service, he had done a meritorious service. The emperor gave a decree that he wanted to see Yang Qindong in person and see what the so-called good fortune was. The officials were all waiting with their eyes down and nose down, waiting for the appearance of the sixth young master of the Yang clan. They wanted to see what the good fortune was and what the person who wrote those wonderful stories looked like. A eunuch went out to spread the news that Mao Mu was accompanying Yang Qindong outside the main hall. When he heard that the emperor wanted to see him, he immediately cupped his fist and said with a smile, "Congratulations, official Yang." "Ah, eunuch Mao is too polite. Congratulations, congratulations. After this matter, I also welcome eunuch Mao to visit the Yang clan manor." Yang Qindong also cupped his fist and returned the greeting. Of course, of course. In the future there will be many places to disturb official Yang." Ah. There was silence in the imperial court. Several ministers and important officials were standing there with their eyes closed. Only a few young officials who could not remain calm would look out of the main hall from time to time. Just from this point, it could be seen that compared to calming one's qi, ginger was spicier. He's coming, he's coming. About half a cup of tea's time later, a young man wearing a long robe was led into the main hall by a young eunuch. He was tall and slender and his face was as bright as the moon. His every movement was filled with confidence, and he did not seem to be nervous because he was entering the main hall of the imperial palace. Of course, it would be a lie to say that he was not nervous. No matter what, this was Yang Qindong's first time entering the imperial palace. However, he adjusted his breathing very well, so that his face maintained a calm appearance that others would think it was. After entering the hall, he strode forward. When he was 20 steps away from the throne, he stood still. Then he knelt on the ground and said, "Governor Yang Qindong of Jianing Prefecture pays his respects to the emperor. Long live the emperor." "Minister Yang, please rise." Ing Zong's face was full of curiosity. He had read the legend of the Condor heroes, Shao Li's flying dagger, and the smiling, proud wanderer. He was attracted by the wonderful content, and now that he finally saw the author, he could not help but be curious. Yang Qindong said, "Thank you, your majesty." Then he stood up and looked at Zhu Qizhen, who was sitting on the dragon throne. He felt that Zhu Qizhen was young and a bit handsome. Of course, compared to being handsome, Yang Qindong felt that Zhu Qizhen's appearance was better. "You are Yang Qindong? Are you the one who struck the drum?" Ing Zong asked with interest. All the ministers present, including Wang Zhen, were looking at Yang Qindong. In fact, among these people except for Hu Zhangning, who was standing to the side, it was the first time they saw this young man, the founder of Yang Bao. Replying to your majesty, "It was me who struck the drum. There was really a great omen in the world and I was impatient, so I struck the drum. I ask for your majesty's forgiveness." "No matter, I can understand your intentions. If there is really a great omen, I will acquit you. However, if you dare to deceive me, you will be punished for several crimes. Do you understand?" As Ing Zong spoke, his face suddenly became serious and his expression became serious. It was said that accompanying the emperor was like accompanying a tiger. Although Zhu Qizhen was not old, he had been the emperor for 13 years. Once he became dignified, there was still a trace of power. He would be punished for several crimes, not just two. It could be seen that Ing Zong had included the matter of Yang Qindong beating Wang Go and his mother. It could be seen that Zhu Qizhen was not muddle-headed. It was just that he did not want to think about some things. "I understand. Please allow me to report." Yang Qindong did not feel the slightest bit of fear because of the emperor's words, because what he was about to report was indeed an auspicious omen. Its influence could even be passed down through the ages, could shock the world and would benefit millions of people. With so much influence in use, Yang Qindong was naturally full of confidence. "Good, beloved Minister Yang, please speak. This emperor and the other ministers are all listening." Ing Zong nodded, looking like he was all ears. At this time, not only Zhu Qizhen but all of the civil and military officials in the court pricked up their ears. They all wanted to hear if this matter that was caused by striking the drum was really a great omen or if it was just an excuse to tease the officials. Feeling the atmosphere in the court was too tense, Yang Qindong's lips curled up. He did not go straight to the main topic, but cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, before I report this matter, I wonder if I can ask the officials a few questions?" "Is this related?" Ing Zong was still waiting to hear about the auspicious omen. He was originally in high spirits, but when he heard Yang Qindong's request, his face became constipated. "It is related, it is greatly related," Yang Qindong replied. Chapter 53. Alright, if that's the case, you may ask. My beloved ministers, no matter what Minister Yang asks, you only need to answer truthfully. Seeing Yang Qindong speak with such certainty, Ing Zong suppressed his curiosity. He wanted to see what this person was planning. Thank you, Your Majesty. With the Emperor's permission, Yang Qindong first cupped his hands in thanks, then turned his gaze to the civil and military officials on both sides of the court. As his gaze swept over them, many of the officials couldn't help but lower their heads. They didn't understand what the sixth young master of the Yang clan wanted to do. What kind of questions would he ask? If it was related to secrets and privacy, should they answer? If they didn't answer, they would be deceiving the emperor. If they answered, they might fall into a trap. At this moment, many people were cursing Yang Qindong in their hearts for being meddlesome. Yang Qindong didn't want to think about the mentality of the crowd. The reason he did this was for the sake of his next plan. There was a saying that only when there was a comparison would it be deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. What he was looking for now was the art of comparison. May I ask which one of you is the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zua? As soon as these words were spoken, there were a few more heavy sighs in the court. Clearly, when these people saw that Yang Qindong didn't call their names, they couldn't help but relax a lot, to the point that their breathing became heavier. As soon as the voice fell, a person walked out from the front of the court. He had a dignified appearance and had the air of a minister. He looked to be around 60 years old. This old official is Wang Zua, but does Magistrate Yang have something to ask? Wang's courtesy name was Meng Fu. He was well versed in the classics and history, skilled in financial management, and held the position of Minister of Revenue. Lord Wang, this official greets you. I've called you Lord Wang today because I want to ask if our great Ming dynasty has sufficient food and if the people have enough to eat and where? Yang Qindong was very respectful towards capable people. When he faced Wang Zuo's bow, he also expressed his feelings and was incomparably sincere. Wang Zuo had been in the bureaucracy for dozens of years, so what kind of people had he not seen? He had already refined his fiery eyes. Just now, whether Yang Qindong's bow was sincere or just for show, he could naturally tell. Seeing that the other party was sincerely asking for advice, he replied, "Our great Ming dynasty still has plenty of food. As for the food and clothing of the common people, there are still some border areas that have not been completely solved." As expected of an old official, his reaction was quick. It was obvious that they did not have enough food, but they said it in such a euphemistic way, using the difference in area as an answer. In this way, even if Yang Qindong were to say that there were people who didn't have enough to eat, he would have something to refute and would not be completely powerless to fight back. Yang Qindong did not comment on Wang Zuo's mature words. This was originally not the main point, so he continued to ask, "I would like to ask official Wang again, why is it that our great Ming emperor is wise and his subjects are dedicated, yet there are still people who do not have enough to eat in such a time of prosperity?" Governor Yang, watch your words and actions. Don't stray from the topic. The Minister of Rights, Hu Xiao, had not spoken, but at this time he suddenly reminded Yang Qindong that his words were a bit too extreme. This was not because Hu Xiao wanted to make things difficult for Yang Qindong. On the contrary, he was helping him. No matter what, because of him, Hu Changning had meritorious service. Based on this point, he had to express his gratitude. Thank you for your reminder, official. This official will pay attention. Yang Qindong did not know who Hu Xiao was, nor did he know who he was. However, from the other party's words, he could feel a trace of goodwill, so he immediately cupped his hands and thanked him. Then, when he looked at Wang Zuo, he changed the topic and asked, "Official Wang, how much farmland does our great Ming dynasty have, and how many people do we have? How much land can be produced per mu, and how many people can it support?" This question was directly related to the foundation of the country, so Wang Zuo naturally would not answer lightly. However, there were some questions that he could still answer. The ratio of land to population is slightly lacking. The average yield of land per mu is about 2 stones. If there is a good harvest, the people will naturally not have to worry about food. However, if there is a disaster year, there will be a bit of a shortage. Wang Zuo's answer was reasonable and pointed directly at the heavens. What he meant was that the people relied on the heavens for food. If the weather was good, the country would be prosperous and the people would be at peace. On the other hand, if there was a problem, it would not be with the people but with the heavens. Yes, no one can grasp the temper of the heavens. No one can predict whether the weather will be good or bad. For a time, the officials below suddenly began to discuss. They seemed to be sighing about something, but in fact they were using this to tell Yang Qindong that the temper of the heavens was not something that could be controlled by anyone. Therefore it was reasonable that there was a shortage of food. While the people below were discussing, even Zhu Qizhen, who was sitting high on the dragon throne, nodded in agreement. This wasn't the first time he had heard such talk, and he also thought it was reasonable. Sometimes, because of natural disasters, there would even be imperial censors who would point out that he, the emperor, the son of heaven, had done something inappropriate and caused the disaster. Every time he was quite angry, but he had no way to refute. Everyone seemed to have understood something, and they were either thinking about something or whispering about something. Suddenly Yang Qindong, who was standing in the middle of the court, suddenly said, "Then may I ask Lord Wang, if there is a kind of grain that can exceed 2 stones per mu, will it change the problem of food shortage?" Wang Zhua, who was asked, instinctively asked, "But I wonder what Magistrate Yang is talking about. What is the number of stones per mu that can exceed 2 stones per mu? What if I say it is 15 stones? After a few questions, Yang Qindong finally threw out the trump card that he had been planning for a long time. Silence, extreme silence. The court, which was originally bustling with noise, suddenly became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone held their breath at this moment, and some even widened their eyes and mouths. Their mouths looked like they could stuff a light bulb in. Swoosh. After extreme silence, there was rapid movement. Wang Zhua, who was already in his 60s, suddenly became much more agile. He rushed in front of Yang Qindong in a big stride, and suddenly reached out his hands to grab Yang Qindong's hands with lightning speed. His eyes were filled with excitement as he asked, "Magistrate Yang, is what you said just now true?" At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Yang Qindong, waiting for his answer. If this person dared to say that it was a joke, it was likely that many people's spittle would immediately splatter on his face. It might even be exaggerated to say that it could drown him. Yang Qindong felt that his vigilance was already very high, but he was still firmly grabbed by Wang Zhua. From this, it could be seen that the power of potential was really limitless. Seeing that Yang Qindong did not answer and was instead stuttering, Wang Zhua was afraid that he was joking. He urged anxiously, "What do you mean by this and that, Magistrate Yang? Hurry up and say it." Yang Qindong blushed. "That, Lord Wang, you're hurting my hand." It was Wang Zhua's turn to blush. He immediately loosened his grip, but his expression was still extremely nervous. "Hurry up and say it, is what you said just now true?" "Yes. But when I said 15 pickles per mu, it was referring to..." Before Yang Qindong could finish his sentence, one of the courtiers at the side said quickly, "It seems like this is an exception. What a joke, how can there be such a high yield of grain in this world?" "That's not necessarily true. Even if it can occasionally reach the maximum yield of 15 pickles, it would usually be around 5 pickles. That's already very high." Some people spoke up for Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong, who was about to speak, suddenly stopped when he heard those words. Instead he stood there and looked left and right, waiting for them to finish. "All of you shut up." Wang Zhua could not stand it anymore. As the Minister of Revenue of a country, money and grain were the things that he dealt with the most. And grain was the foundation of a country. Without grain the soldiers would not be able to eat. How could they win a war? Without grain the commoners would not be able to eat and could only rebel. Without grain the country would not be a country and its foundation would not be stable. However, there was only so much land in a country, and the number of commoners was increasing year by year. In order to solve this problem, Wang Zhua had thought of countless ways. But he had never found a solution. He had originally thought that this would be the only way in his lifetime and that this matter would be left to his descendants to solve. He had never thought that Yang Qindong would suddenly stand up and say that there was a grain yield of 15 pickles per mu. How could he not be overjoyed? This was a critical moment, and there were indeed other courtiers making sarcastic remarks. How could he not be angry? With Wang Zhua's rebuke, the restless courtiers instantly quieted down. It was clear that Wang Zhua still had a certain amount of prestige among the courtiers. Speaking of which, if they offended this person he could casually make things difficult for them. When it came to asking for money he would give them a little later or find an excuse to give them less. No one would be able to stand it. The crowd fell silent again. When Wang Zhua looked at Yang Qindong, his eyes were filled with eagerness. "Governor Yang, they have all shut up. Please continue." "All right." Yang Qindong nodded. Then a smile suddenly appeared on his face as he said, "The 15 pickles per mu I mentioned refers to a year of great calamity. Even in a normal year it can reach 20 pickles. If it is a good year, it is not strange to reach 25 pickles." Boom. At this moment the court could no longer quiet down. Everyone looked at Yang Qindong as if they had not heard clearly. The sound of heavy breathing could be heard everywhere. Do you need me to repeat it? Yang Qindong seemed to be used to this sudden change in atmosphere and asked Wang Zuo with a smile. Yes, yes. Wang Zuo nodded his head rapidly like a chick pecking at rice. I said that 15 pickles per mu is the lowest yield. It can reach 20 pickles, or even 25 pickles is possible. Yang Qindong said with absolute certainty. Chapter 54. This time, everyone perked up their ears and listened carefully. After confirming that they did not hear wrongly, all the officials became excited. The Minister of Rights, Hu Xiao, reacted even faster. With a plop, he knelt on the ground and wept in the direction of Yingzong. Congratulations, Your Majesty. With this item, our great Ming dynasty will no longer be plagued by hunger. Following this, the country will be prosperous and the people will be at peace. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Congratulations. In an instant, all the officials except for Yang Qindong knelt on the ground. There were even some who were crying and laughing as if they had gone crazy. Yingzong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, finally understood what had happened. After being the emperor for so many years, he naturally knew the importance of food. Now that he heard that there was a solution, he was naturally overjoyed. When he looked at Yang Qindong, his face was filled with joy. He wasn't angry at all because Yang Qindong didn't kneel down. Instead, he asked in a friendly voice, "But I wonder where is the grain that my beloved Yang Qindong mentioned?" When the words were spoken, all the officials looked at each other. They were so happy that they had forgotten where this item was. If they said that it was on the sea, it would be difficult for them. After all, everyone knew that Yang Qindong had brought the 3 godly mirrors from the sea for the palace. There were even many officials who went to look at them. They could clearly see the reflection of their hair. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a godly item. Fortunately, Yang Qindong didn't continue to stimulate everyone's nerves. He answered confidently, "It's in the Yang Manor 15 miles south of the city. However, because most of them are still in the growing period and haven't fully matured, it's not suitable to harvest them now." Hearing that the item was 15 li away from the capital, how could Yingzong and the officials wait? Even if we can't harvest it, we can at least take a look, right? Naturally, this question was asked by Wang Zuo. Of course you can. Not only can you look at them, but you can also harvest a small amount of them. You can even make some for everyone to taste and experience the taste of this new food. Since he had decided to offer the potatoes, naturally, Yang Qindong didn't have the slightest intention of hiding it. Regardless of whether he would be disappointed in the Great Ming Dynasty, or whether he would replace the Great Ming Dynasty, there was one thing that was always right, and that was that this thing was something that would benefit the common people. With it, more people would be able to avoid the end of starvation. Hearing that not only would they be able to harvest some, but they would also be able to taste it, the crowd became excited. Even Yingzong became very happy. Alright, since that's the case, let's go to Yang village to take a look. Let's see the true auspicious item of our great Ming dynasty. The emperor gave the order, and naturally, all the officials agreed in unison. After that, the embroidered uniform guards and the eunuchs got busy. The emperor was going out of the palace, and this wasn't a small matter. The problem of the route and the responsibility of safety had to be clearly prepared. When Wang Zuo and the other important officials knew the location, how could they wait any longer? They kept urging them and even ignored Wang Zhen's winking at the side, reminding the officials to be calm. Yingzong was 20 years old, and he was also someone who couldn't sit still. Seeing that this kind of preparation was going to take a long time, he immediately waved his hand and said, "There's no need to make such a big fuss. Zhen will be with the officials, so how can there be any danger? Let the embroidered uniform guards and the Eastern Palace guards each arrange 500 people to protect Zhen." Even though it was just a small matter, they still mobilized 1,000 people. This made Yang Qindong speechless. However, the officials once again knelt on the ground and praised the emperor for being wise. Yang Qindong could see that no matter what the emperor did, as long as it wasn't cutting off the heads of the officials, it was a wise thing to say. It was no wonder that most of the emperors were fooled. Under this kind of situation where they were praised every day, there were probably not many people who could withstand it. The officials were anxious, and Yingzong was also very anxious. He just changed into a set of golden dragon robes, which was more convenient for walking, and followed everyone out of the palace. In a moment, the streets were cleared, and the people of the warden's office of the 5 cities also followed to maintain the order of the city. The group of people left the Forbidden City, passed through Qingtian Gate, Daming Gate and Xingyang Gate and reached the outer city. From Yongding Gate they rushed to the Yangjia village. The large group of people was mighty, and the common people on the side of the road were very curious. What happened? Why did the emperor leave the palace? Beside the dragon carriage were civil and military officials. Everyone was in a hurry, and their footsteps were hurried, as if they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to keep up with the group. Could it be that something happened? Did the Walla attack us? The common people were still suspicious, but the group was moving faster and faster, until they disappeared from the capital, leaving behind a trail of dust, Yangjia village. According to the sixth young master's orders, Tiger's Mane had already made preparations, and several large pots were set up beside the manor. The cook Yi Chior was so excited that her face was as red as an apple. Just now, Tiger's Mane had told her that she would be cooking for others today. It was just that these diners were not ordinary people, but were very likely to be the officials of the Great Ming Dynasty. It was even possible that the emperor would appear. Heavens! This was cooking for the emperor. Wouldn't that make her an imperial chef? At this moment Yi Chior was very excited. The old steward Yang Hai brought Yang Ning out of the manor. From time to time he would instruct his son. The sixth young master is a very capable person, the kind of great talent that only appears once every few hundred years. In the future you must follow the sixth young master and do your best. Yang Ning was a simple and honest person, and in fact he had a steady and honest personality. After listening to his father's instructions countless times, he still spoke as if it was the first time he had heard them. Father, don't worry. Ninger will definitely do my best to serve the sixth young master. No, it's the young master. Ning, didn't you see that Xiaoyin, Tiger's Mane and even the cook Yi Chior all call him the young master? Let me tell you, the Yang family will rely on the sixth young master in the future. Calling him the young master is not a bad thing, do you know? Even if others want to call him that, they don't have the qualifications. Yang Hai turned around and reprimanded his son. But father, why do you still call him the sixth young master? Yang Ning was confused. Ning, father is someone who follows the old master, and I'm old. I can't and don't have the energy to serve other masters. I can't change the way I call him the sixth young master, but you're different. Do you understand? Yang Hai shook his head. If he were 20 years younger, why would he give the opportunity to follow Yang Qindong to someone else? Fortunately, Yang Ning was the son he was most satisfied with, so the benefits didn't flow out. In the end, the meat rotted in his family's pot. This time Yang Ning didn't dare to refute. It wasn't that he didn't understand, but he still nodded to show that he understood. Just as the two of them were talking, dozens of riders came from afar. The leader of the riders was the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Zhangning. At that time, when he heard Yang Qindong say that there was an auspicious omen that could produce up to 10 to 20 dan of grain per mu, he was also shocked. Then he understood that this time he benefited from it. In his happiness, he personally took the lead and wanted to come to Yang village to make arrangements. He didn't want to anger the emperor because the people in the village didn't know how to do things. That would be a big loss for a small gain. They're here. Yang Hai saw the imperial soldiers in flying suits rushing over from afar. He hurriedly said to his son Yang Ning, "Open the village gate and inform the people in the village that the family is not allowed to go out." Yang Ning ran to inform the others, leaving Yang Hai, Tiger's Mane, and Beta Persei to meet Hu Zhangning and the others. Hu Zhangning didn't notice the others, but when he saw Beta Persei, his pupils contracted. Although it had been a long time, he still remembered how Rinpoche dealt with his two subordinates. It was as easy as an adult beating a child. Whoosh! Hu Zhangning took the lead and dismounted from the horse. "I am the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Zhangning. Who will answer me? I am Yang Village's steward, Yang Hai. Greetings, Your Excellency." Yang Hai cupped his fist and greeted him. "So it's Steward Yang." Hu Zhangning also cupped his fist and greeted him. Then he hurriedly said, "The emperor and the civil and military officials will be here soon. You should quickly make some preparations. The old and young in the village." Before Hu Zhangning could finish, Yang Hai had already answered with a smile, "Please rest assured, Lord Hu. The sixth young master has already made arrangements. Everything in the village has also been prepared. Please rest assured, Your Excellency." Hu Zhangning raised his right hand and patted his forehead with a wry smile. In his heart he thought even more highly of Yang Qindong. This person had already planned everything. The beating up of Wang Go in the morning was probably also part of his plan. At such a young age he already had such a strategy. Today he was going to make a great contribution. From the looks of it, his future was limitless. If his daughter really married such a man, it would be a wonderful thing. Next, Hu Zhangning brought the Imperial Guard team into the village to carefully inspect it. After all, the emperor had personally come. Nothing could be careless. When he saw that the manor was indeed in order, and there were even 10 farmers who were skilled in farming standing in front of the land that was used for harvesting in advance, he was completely at ease. Less than an hour later, a group of people arrived at the entrance of the Yang clan manor. The group of people surrounded the dragon carriage and passed through the entrance of the village, finally stopping in front of the village's land. A group of Eastern faction guards and Imperial guards completely surrounded this place to ensure that not even a bird could fly in. Yingzong Zhu Qizhen, accompanied by his teacher Wang Zhen, walked out of the dragon carriage and came to the field of crops. To be honest, this should be the first time Yingzong came to a field of crops. There was a trace of curiosity on his face. He pointed at the dry soil on the ground and asked, "Where is Minister Yang? Is this the place where the grain that can yield 15 dan per mu that you mentioned is here?" Chapter 55. Replying to your majesty, that is correct. Yang Qindong forced his way through the crowd. There was nothing he could do about it. Just a moment ago, a few important officials had pulled him aside and asked him all sorts of questions. They asked him what the name of this thing was and how to eat it. It caused him to answer one question after another, and they all gave the same answer to everyone. However, there were still many people who did not speak to him. He did not know if those people were still sulking in their hearts. Yingzong nodded and then carefully looked at the ground beside his feet. The densely packed stems and leaves were already showing signs of withering. He asked curiously, "Beloved official Yang, are you talking about this thing?" Looking at the stems and leaves from afar, it looked like soybeans that were still in the planting stage. At this moment, not only Yingzong but the other important officials were also puzzled. They did not understand. This thing did not look very densely packed, so how could it produce more than 15 dan per mu? Also, how was this thing eaten? Was it eaten like vegetable leaves? Yang Qindong knew that everyone was puzzled. He immediately walked forward in large strides. When he arrived in front of a thick stem and leaf, he pointed and said, "This is the stem and leaf. It cannot be eaten. Of course, if you are hungry, you can eat it. However, the taste is not good. Its true secret lies at the bottom of the stem and leaf. Because it grows in the soil and is like a bean dozens of times bigger, it is called a potato." While explaining, Yang Qindong bent down and smiled at the crowd. With a slight force from his arm, the plant was lifted up along with its stem and leaves. At the roots that were pulled out of the soil, there were a few fist-sized earthy yellow fruits in front of everyone. Seeing the potato in Yang Qindong's hand under the sunlight, the officials all sucked in a breath of cold air. He saw that there were 4 fist-sized potatoes on the roots, each weighing more than 1 jin. This was amazing. One plant could produce 4 jin, 1 mu of land with 1,000 plants. Wouldn't that mean 4,000 jin? In that case, wouldn't 1 dan be equal to 188 jin? Wouldn't that mean that 1 mu of land could produce more than 20 dan? At this moment, all of their doubts disappeared. While everyone was still in shock, only Yang Qindong still had a look of dissatisfaction on his face as he said, "There are only 4 of them, there should be 5 or 6 of them. Also, it's not fully mature yet. In another half a month it will grow a little." As he spoke, Yang Qindong bent down and plucked another potato under the watchful eyes of the crowd. This time there were 6 fruits on it, and they were not much smaller than the previous one. Only then did Yang Qindong nod his head in satisfaction. Boom. Among the ministers, after seeing this scene, some of them with weak hearts and weak endurance had already fainted on the ground. 6 fruits per stalk, that's 6 caddies. Doesn't this mean that the yield per mu can reach more than 30 dan? The fainted minister was carried away by the embroidered uniform guards, and the imperial physicians who had followed them out came forward to treat him. Those ministers who had not fainted had indeed squeezed forward one by one, wanting to personally pull out a stalk to try. Seeing that everyone was moving forward together, it was inevitable that the bean sprouts would be trampled on. At this moment, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhuo, played his role as an old minister. "Everyone stand back. If anyone dares to move forward, they will be executed." With this shout, everyone quieted down. Then Wang Zhuo knelt down in front of Yingzong with a face full of tears. "Your Majesty, please punish this minister for overstepping his authority." It's fine. Beloved official Wang is just acting out of love. We understand. Yingzong laughed and reached out to help Wang Zhuo up. Next, we will each pull out a potato and see who can pull out the most. How about it? To be able to work together with the emperor was naturally something that all of the ministers wished for. Even if it was just harvesting crops together, it was also a kind of glory. For a moment, many envious gazes landed on Wuxia. Wuxia did not hear or see anything. Now that his gaze had landed on the potatoes, there was nothing else that could attract his attention. This minister obeys. Wuxia bowed and replied. Ingzong laughed and looked at Yang Qindong on the side. Beloved official Yang, will it be fine for us and official Wang to do this? It's fine, it's fine. There are only 10 mu of land here and it has been hastened. It was originally meant for the emperor and all of you to harvest everything. Just do as you please. In a while, when we leave, everyone can bring some back for their families to try. Yang Qindong laughed and had an indifferent expression. Good. Then I will go with beloved official Wang first. In a while, everyone will work in pairs. Remember, you must not trample on or waste this heaven-bestowed item. Ingzong spoke heavenly words and labeled the potatoes as a heaven-bestowed item. For a moment, all of the ministers cheered loudly. On the other hand, Yang Qindong had a bitter expression. It was clearly his contribution. How did it become a heaven-bestowed item? Alright, even he was brought here by the heavens, including the entire warehouse. Then it was only right for the heavens to take some advantage. Moreover, Ingzong's luck was not bad. He actually pulled out 6 potatoes at once. Wuxia was a bit worse. He only pulled out 5 fruits. However, this was enough for them to be excited. Reality had already proven that 20 dan per mu was the lowest yield. This way, the people of the world would not have to face the pain of starvation because of a lack of food. Once Ingzong and Wuxia left, Hu Shao and Minister of War Kuang Yi walked forward. They became the second batch to pull out the potatoes. Yang Qindong did not pay attention to the actions of the ministers. Even if it was a bit of trampling and wasting, it did not affect the overall situation. Now was the time to let everyone have a taste of the potatoes. Walking in front of Ingzong and Wuxia, Yang Qindong said with a smile, Emperor Official Wang, you don't mind if this official uses the potatoes you pulled out to cook, right? Ah, of course we don't mind. We also want to have a taste of these potatoes. Ingzong laughed loudly. Wuxia's mood was also very good. Alright, then I will bask in the emperor's light and also have a taste of these delicious potatoes. Also, I asked Governor Yang to take this and cook it as well. Oh, I shouldn't call you Governor Yang anymore. For this great merit, the emperor will definitely reward you. It was unknown when Wang Zhen came over. He was also holding a potato with 6 fruits in his hand. Of course, no one knew whether he had pulled out the 6 pills himself or whether he had snatched them from someone else. Hearing Wang Zhen's sudden words, Yang Qindong naturally responded with a grateful smile. Perhaps only Wang Zhen would be able to take credit in front of the emperor and be so straightforward. Even if the other ministers wanted to ask for credit, they would have to avoid it. That's right. Ingzong, who was reminded, nodded heavily. This time, beloved official Yang has made a great contribution. He should be greatly rewarded. Although it was said to be a great reward, Ingzong wasn't mentally prepared for it. He also didn't know how to promote Yang Qindong. Thus, his gaze fell on Wuxia and asked, Beloved official Wang, in your opinion, how should we reward beloved official Yang? This subject boldly suggests that he should be transferred to the Ministry of Revenue. Wuxia had a good impression of Yang Qindong. For him to be able to contribute such a good thing, it was enough to prove that he wasn't a selfish person. Of course, he wanted to promote him. First, he would transfer him to his own ministry. After that, he could make adjustments at any time. When he heard that he was going to be transferred to an actual position, Yang Qindong immediately shook his head and said, Your Majesty, I don't dare to dare. This subject doesn't dare to be greedy. The appearance of the potato is because Your Majesty's benevolence in governing the country was moved by the heavens. Thus, this auspicious item was bestowed to Your Majesty. As for this subject, it was just a coincidence that I obtained this item. It really can't be considered a great merit. This subject is still young and still very playful. This is the first time I came to the capital and haven't seen the prosperity of this place. I still want to open a restaurant and enjoy the scenery of the world. Attributing the merit to the emperor was something that should be done. What was that saying? If you made a contribution, it was the good of the leader. If you did something wrong, then it was because you couldn't understand the intentions of the leader. It had nothing to do with the leader. Yang Qindong gave the merit to Zhu Qixin. This was something that should be done. As long as he didn't lack benefits, it was fine. He took the opportunity to say that he was still young and wanted to play for a few more years. Presumably no one would not understand. Ing Zong, who was standing at the side, was originally prepared to agree to Wang's request and send Yang Qindong to the Ministry of Revenue. But when he heard Yang Qindong's words, he suddenly felt elated. The appearance of the potato, this auspicious item, was actually because of his benevolence in governing the country. It seemed that he was a wise ruler. In an instant his mood improved. He also knew that Yang Qindong was still young and wanted to play for another 2 years. Thus he smiled and agreed. Since that's the case, Yang Qindong listened to the decree. This subject Yang Qindong receives the decree. At this moment Yang Qindong obediently knelt down. There was no other way. Under this kind of system, it was impossible for his knees not to go soft. Yang Qindong of the Yang family is bestowed the title of High Scholar. He will be promoted to horse washing, also known as First Horse, assisting the Crown Prince, effective immediately. Without saying too much, Ing Zong considered for a moment and gave Yang Qindong a reward. Bestowing the title of High Scholar meant that Yang Qindong did not need to take the elementary scholar examination. Horse washing was a secondary class, rank 5 official. His specific duties were to be the Crown Prince's attendant. It was just that Zhu Qizhen did not have a Crown Prince yet. Although the imperial court did not set any rules, they had already reached an agreement. Only those who were rank 5 or above were allowed to do business. Ing Zong made this decision in consideration of the fact that Yang Qindong would be opening a restaurant in the near future. He was paving the way for him. Being promoted from rank 9 to secondary class 5 was equivalent to being promoted by 7 ranks. In addition to the title of High Scholar, although it was still lacking compared to the contribution of the potato, it was not too far off. The most important thing was that Yang Qindong was still too young. He was only 18 years old, and there were many opportunities for him to be promoted in the future. From the looks of it, the rewards were quite generous. What Yang Qindong wanted was to be a rank 5 official. Only then would he be able to do things properly. As for the actual position, he had not thought about it. He also did not have the energy and time to do things for the imperial court. Now that he had gotten what he wanted, he immediately knelt down and thanked the emperor. Chapter 56. However, at the same time he also asked for an imperial edict. In order to cultivate potatoes, he needed to live in the Yang family manor and could not attend court unless there was something important. Regarding this, Ing Zong was in a good mood and naturally agreed. He was just a minor class 5 official, so there was no need for him to attend court. As for living outside the capital, since he liked it, he could do as he pleased. This was also Yang Qindong's plan for the future. After receiving the imperial edict, no one would be able to urge him to live in the capital. This way he would have a lot of autonomy in terms of his safety. In other words, he would have more protection. Like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate, Yang Qindong had accomplished something that others couldn't do for many years in an instant. When he stood up, there were waves of congratulations around him. He also cupped his fists towards his colleagues to express his gratitude. Then he laughed and said, "Since everyone is here today, let's have a taste of the potatoes." This official has already arranged for the kitchen maids to make many types of potatoes. Good. Everyone was very happy to have such a high yield of potatoes. This was a great thing that benefited the country and the people. Moreover, it had nothing to do with anyone's benefit. Naturally, everyone was happy. However, there were also some shrewd officials who were thinking about how to befriend Yang Qindong and then get more seeds to cultivate in their own manners. This way they would not have to worry about using money to buy food in the future. The officials all had their own plans. Minister of Revenue Wang Zhuo had already seen through them and proposed to the emperor that the seeds should be distributed reasonably. Otherwise, once these seeds were spread outside the country, the enemies would become stronger and threaten the safety of the great Ming Dynasty. This was an experienced schemer. At the end of the Ming Dynasty, the 8 great Jin merchants of Shangxi had sent large amounts of military equipment and food to Liaodong to sell to the slaves Jian. This caused them to become stronger and stronger. In the end, the great Ming Dynasty had to spend a large amount of military resources every year, causing the national treasury to be empty. They had no choice but to eat from the common people, causing the peasant uprising to become more and more powerful. This caused the great Ming Dynasty to collapse internally, creating an opportunity for the slaves Jian to enter the Ming Dynasty. Now that the potato production was so high, if the seeds were to be spread out, once Walla and the others got their hands on them, they would have enough food to recruit more soldiers. As a result, the bigger they became, the more of a threat they would pose to the great Ming Dynasty. Although Ing Zong was young and inexperienced, he knew the importance of potatoes. He looked at Wang Zhua and asked, "Does Minister Wang have any ideas?" "Your Majesty, there is no way to completely put an end to it. Just now, I asked Sir Horse Washing Poplar, and he said that the planting of potatoes is very convenient. You only need to wait for the potatoes to mature and sprout before planting them. Next year you will be able to obtain a large number of fruits. Unless all the potatoes were kept to themselves, they would inevitably be taken by others. And such a good thing should be planted all over the country. Only when it's widely used can more people benefit." Wang Zhua shook his head. There was no such thing as guarding against thieves for 1,000 days in this world. Even if you wanted to guard against them, you had to be able to guard against them first. Initially, Zhang Xian thought that Wang Zhua had a good idea since he had said so much. But after listening for a while, it seemed that there was no solution. Zhang Xian's expression couldn't help but become ugly as he asked, "Since that's the case, what does Minister Wang mean?" Wang Zhua hesitated for a moment. He knew that what he was going to say next might offend some people. But when he thought about the great Ming's eternal prosperity, it seemed that he could only offend them. Thus he said, "Your Majesty, this subject wishes to ask you to issue a decree. Before any diplomatic mission leaves the border, they must be checked to see if they are carrying potatoes. Once they are found, all the envoys will be detained and arrested as spies. But if they are found to be smuggling potatoes out of the border, they will be heavily punished and 9 generations of their families will be punished." When he said 9 generations of their families will be punished, Wang Zhua's heart skipped a beat. He knew that this was a bit too ruthless and the punishment was too heavy. But when he considered the impact that potatoes could bring, he still felt that this kind of punishment wasn't excessive. A person who didn't even care about the country could no longer be called a person. Thus, any punishment wouldn't be excessive. When Wang Zhua said this, he was shocked. When Ing Zong heard this, his eyes suddenly widened. However, it only took an instant for him to recover. The Great Ming was the Great Ming of the Zhou family. If this country was destroyed, perhaps the officials could continue to be officials after defecting, but he would no longer be able to become the emperor. Thus, if potatoes were to spread, the one who would suffer the greatest loss would be him. What was there that he couldn't be heartless about? "Alright, we understand. After we return to the palace, write a decree and announce it to the world." Ing Zong Zhu Qizhen decisively made a decision. "Your Majesty is wise." After Wang Zhua finished reporting this matter, he immediately felt his body relax. At this moment, it was as if more than half of the strength in his body had been sucked out. The potatoes and pork ribs are ready. Following Yang Qindong's shout, the fragrance from the big pot immediately spread out for 3 li. It attracted the hundreds of officials who had just finished harvesting the potatoes to gather around like gluttonous worms. Wash the pork ribs and potatoes and prepare them. Put the pork ribs into the pot and add cooking wine. Then turn on the fire and cook them. Drain the cooked pork ribs and set them aside. Add oil and pepper into the pot and stir-fry the pork ribs. Then add soy sauce and other seasoning. Then pour the pork ribs into the pot and stir-fry the potatoes. Finally, remove the MSG from the pot. The hot and sour onion shredded potatoes are ready. Cut the potatoes and soak them in water. Peel the onions and wash them and cut them into shreds. Wash the green and red peppers and cut them into shreds. Pour oil into the wok and stir-fry the chives, ginger, garlic and dried chilies. Pour in the shredded potatoes and stir-fry them for a while. Add in some water and stir-fry the onions. Add in soy sauce, sugar and a suitable amount of salt and stir-fry them. Pour in some balsamic vinegar and stir-fry them evenly. Then add in some sesame oil and stir-fry them. After the 2 potato dishes, 1 meat and 1 vegetable were done, there were chopped pepper potato slices, fried potato strips, hot and sour shredded potatoes, eggplant stewed potatoes, braised potato chicken, rice potato cakes, spicy dry pot potato slices, honey, juicy potatoes, scallion potato stir-fry, crispy fried potatoes, minced meat and so on. Steaming the whole potato could also satisfy one's hunger. For many people who tasted potatoes for the first time, they felt that it was a kind of delicacy. A single potato could be used to make nearly 20 different dishes. While everyone ate heartily, they also praised it loudly. In addition, the cooking skills of the kitchen maid Yi Qiuer was not bad. Together with the MSG that Yang Qindong made, which was only available in Jianing and had not spread to the capital, everyone ate until their mouths were full of oil. Even Ing Zong ate 2 bowls of rice and a steamed potato with the dishes. If it wasn't for Wang Zhen who was serving beside him reminding him, he might have eaten another bowl. After eating so much, Ing Zong said with a joyful expression, "We are looking forward to when beloved official Yang's restaurant will be open for business." Replying, "Your Majesty, it will be open soon. It should be open within a month. When that time comes, Your Majesty can come and give us your opinion if you have time." Yang Chendong chuckled. He did not fight with the other officials to eat the potatoes. To him, this thing had been eaten for decades and had long lost its freshness. Thus he had been playing the role of a waiter. When he saw an empty plate on the outdoor table, he would order someone to serve it. He was extremely busy. His reply to Ing Zong was not perfunctory. Before they came, Yang Hai had already chosen a location for the restaurant. Even the new manager had been found. It was his cousin Yang Fu. When Yang Fu was in Jianing Prefecture, he had worked very happily with Yang Chendong and earned a lot of money. Seeing that the sixth young master was about to go to the capital, he was also tempted and wanted to discuss it with him. Yang Chendong was just thinking about who would be the most suitable person to manage the restaurant. When he saw Yang Fu jump out, he immediately agreed and hired Yang Fu to manage the restaurant with 10% of the shares. Yang Fu knew that the capital was not like Jianing. The human relations there were complicated and it was not something that a merchant like him could understand. With the banner of sixth cousin, it would be much easier to do some things. Furthermore, 10% of the shares was not a small amount. He immediately accepted the agreement and brought Yang Chendong's blueprint to the capital. Only after coming to the capital and seeing those blueprints did Yang Fu realize just how extravagant his sixth cousin was. Just the initial investment had reached 50,000 taels, and just the renovation alone had cost him another 100,000 taels. Just what was he planning to build? Was he going to build a small palace? Of course Yang Fu did not understand. Only when the required items were brought into the restaurant did he realize how ignorant he was before. Only now did he know how much his 10% share was worth. As the saying went, there was no harm if there was no comparison. At this moment, he realized that the Four Seas restaurant in Jianing Prefecture was as simple as a child playing house. Putting aside the restaurant, Ing Zong heard Yang Chendong's invitation. Thinking about how the other party had made such a great contribution, he should satisfy this small request. He immediately nodded and said, "All right, if there is time we will go and take a look." With just this sentence, the other officials naturally understood what was going on. In the future, if they wanted to find trouble with anyone, they shouldn't go looking for trouble with the Yang clan restaurant. If they didn't handle it well, they might end up offending the emperor. Yang Chendong was still busy. He even called for everyone to bring back some of the potatoes they had dug up so that they could let their families have a taste. This was naturally met with cheers from the officials. Ing Zong finished eating first and prepared to return. He called for Yang Chendong and said, "Beloved official Yang, I will leave a group of embroidered uniform guards in the eastern depot here to help you guard the potatoes that have not been harvested yet." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Yang Chendong naturally knew that since the potatoes had been exposed, it was no longer his problem alone. As such, he had already mentally prepared himself for this. Very good. Satisfied with Yang Chendong's attitude, Ing Zong continued, "As for how many potato seeds to keep and how to distribute them, I will have Sir and the rest of you discuss them together." "Right, what is the name of your restaurant?" Replying, "Your Majesty, the Immortal Abode." Yang Chendong replied confidently. Chapter 57. Immortal Abode. What a good name. Ah. Ing Zong was stunned at first, but then he began to laugh heartily. "Very good. When the Immortal Abode opens for business, we will personally visit and taste the delicacies of your restaurants. This subject will definitely welcome Your Majesty's arrival with open arms." How could Yang Chendong not see that Ing Zong was giving him face? Ing Zong had only said that he had time, but now that he had confirmed it, his attitude had changed. He immediately knelt on the ground again and shouted, "Long live Your Majesty." The other officials also saw this scene clearly. They couldn't help but look at Yang Chendong with envy. This person was only 18, right? Back then they were still studying when they were at this age. Some of them didn't even pass the Shiozai examination. However, the other party was already a secondary grade 5 official and even received the favor of the emperor. It was really infuriating to compare oneself with others. Ing Zong left the Yang clan manor under the protection of a group of guards. However, the other officials didn't leave. Some of them still hadn't eaten their fill while others were waiting. They were waiting for Yang Qindong to fulfill his promise and bring back a few extra potatoes to share with their families. Since he had already promised, Yang Qindong naturally kept his word. He arranged for Tiger's Mane, Yang Hai, Yang Neng, and the others to gather the potatoes first, then distribute them according to their rank. Every official received at least 5 kilograms, and if that wasn't enough, they could just scavenge more. At the very least, he still had the final say on how to distribute the potatoes. Moreover, this kind of opportunity to make friends with the officials was rare. How could Yang Qindong give it up so easily? Because of Yang Qindong's magnanimity, the officials all returned satisfied. Even the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, who had always been known as a miser, was all smiles. Before leaving, he said to Yang Qindong, "Yang Shima, you have to take good care of those potatoes. Also, my Ministry of Revenue's plantation needs 10,000 mu of potato seeds. This cannot be discounted." Don't worry. Yang Qindong patted his chest and promised. Potatoes were still a rare commodity in the Great Ming Dynasty, and they had already been planted in the surrounding areas of Crimson City. Once they ran out of seeds, they could just plant them from there. Furthermore, there were still bags of potatoes piled up like mountains in the big warehouse. If there was a need, they could be taken out immediately. The biggest advantage of the big warehouse was that everything placed there was very fresh. There was no expiration date at all. This allowed Yang Qindong to use the things there without worry. As long as he didn't take them out, they would be as good as new. With Yang Qindong's guarantee, Wang Zhua left satisfied. All the officials left, leaving only Wang Zhen and his disciples strolling around nearby. From time to time, he would arrange for the people of the Eastern Faction Guards to guard all the key points. Other than the people of Yang Village, no one else was allowed to casually approach. Otherwise, they would be directly arrested and imprisoned. Wang Zhen seemed to be patiently giving instructions. Yang Qindong smiled at all of this. He knew that this wasn't because Wang Zhen was responsible for his work, but because he wanted to chat with him and get some benefits. He didn't want to complicate matters. More importantly, Yang Qindong's faction was still rather weak, and he urgently needed to find an ally. If Wang Zhen could be of help, he didn't mind sharing some benefits with him. Of course, this still depended on whether this person was tactful or not. Otherwise, if he was really provoked, he could just walk out of the capital. At that time, the heavens were vast, but there would be far too many places for him to stay. "Eunuch Wang, would you like to enter the study of the manor?" Seeing that Wang Zhen's gaze had already swept over him no less than 5 times, Yang Qindong knew that it was about time. If he continued to endure, he might burn. "Oh, my Yang is too polite. This duke just happens to be a little thirsty." Wang Zhen tactfully gave Wang Chong a way out, and then the two of them laughed at each other before making their way into the Yang clan manor. In the study, Yang Qindong dismissed everyone, not even Xiaoyin. He sat across from Wang Zhen and assumed a negotiating stance. Wang Zhen had been in power for many years and had seen all sorts of situations. He was unhurried, lightly nodding as he tasted the tea leaves in his hand. He appeared to be enjoying himself. The tea leaves that Yang Qindong could bring out weren't very good, only a little better than those sold on the streets. They couldn't enter the eyes of someone like Wang Zhen, who had seen many top-quality tea leaves. But sometimes, what was important in tasting tea was not the tea but the mood and atmosphere. It was clear that this person was enjoying the atmosphere, so he naturally ignored the quality of the tea leaves. When dealing with smart people, there was no need for unnecessary words. Yang Qindong didn't bother with any boring opening remarks, getting straight to the point. "Eunuch Wang, many thanks for your kind words just now. This is a small token of my appreciation." As he spoke, a small box was pushed in front of Wang Zhen. Wang Zhen was indeed a smart person. He didn't even ask what it was. He reached out and opened it. Inside was a contract for 10% of the Immortal Abode's shares. It was only 10%. Wang Zhen didn't object, nor did he agree. He just casually sized up Yang Qindong, clearly waiting for an explanation. "Eunuch Wang, I won't hide it from you. The Immortal Abode's total investment is estimated to be no less than 300,000 taels, perhaps even more." Wang Zhen, who had always been calm and collected, was startled by his first sentence. His twitching eyebrows had already proven everything. It was just a restaurant. How could there be such a large investment? Wang Zhen clearly didn't believe it. However, he also knew that Yang Qindong was a smart person. He wouldn't lie to him about something like this. He could send people to investigate at any time. Was Yang Qindong a smart person? At the very least, today's events had proven that the other party was very smart. But he had still mentioned the number of people. Didn't that mean that there really was such a large investment? As Wang Zhen's expression changed again and again, Yang Qindong bitterly smiled and shook his head. There are some things that even if I don't say, eunuch Wang will be able to find out. So, allow me to make some moves first. The Immortal Abode is located on the busiest street between the Xingyang Gate and the Great Ming Gate. Not only that, but I've also had people buy up the entire street, which has more than doubled in size. Just the main hall alone can accommodate more than 1,000 people eating together. Just the investment and purchase of the land alone cost quite a bit. I don't know how many days it will take to earn it back. Regarding this point, Wang Zhen expressed his agreement. As the Great Ming Dynasty grew stronger and stronger, the direct result was that the price of land in the capital had skyrocketed. It was truly a yearly increase in price. This was also because the location was chosen to be between the outer city and the inner city. If it was all in the inner city, then just the investment of this piece of land and such a large scale would probably cost at least 100,000 taels of silver. Seeing Wang Zhen lightly nod, Yang Qindong smiled and continued, "Just now, I was talking about the dining hall on the first floor that can accommodate 1,000 people at once. There are no less than 50 private rooms around it. There were even 100 private rooms and rooms upstairs. Just the renovation alone would cost at least 100,000 taels of silver. Oh, that's right, I forgot to tell eunuch Wang that the renovation this time is different from the past. I've used transparent glass and new furniture from outside. These things are very expensive and just transporting them will cost a lot." Transparent glass? Wang Zhen couldn't help but ask in shock. The image of a mirror flashed through his mind and he excitedly asked, "Is Yang Shima talking about a mirror?" "No." Yang Qindong shook his head. "Mirrors can reflect images and clearly reflect people. Glass is transparent and doesn't have the function of a mirror. However, it does have the function of isolation and allows people to see clearly without hindrance." "Oh, I'm afraid I can't explain this point in a short time. When the renovation is done, eunuch Wang will naturally be able to see it. However, it is true that this is a new thing. It's a pity that the capital is limited. Otherwise, I would really want to get more. That would be a good time to make a fortune." Speaking of this, Yang Qindong constantly smacked his lips with a look of regret. "Capital? How much do you need?" Hearing that it was a new thing that could make a lot of money, Wang Zhen's interest was piqued. If it could be as magical as a mirror, then it would definitely be a good business. The speed at which he could make money was imaginable. He wanted to get a foot in. Who would complain that the money was too little? Well, if you want to buy in bulk, you'll need at least 5 million taels. Of course, if you have more, that would be even better. That way you'll be able to make even more money. Yang Qindong furrowed his brows, as if he had only come up with this conclusion after careful consideration. As soon as he heard that 5 million taels was barely enough, Wang Zhen immediately gave up on the idea of investing. What kind of joke was this? Not to mention whether or not he had the money on hand, just the current Yang Qindong wasn't enough for him to feel at ease. If he suddenly handed over so much money to the other party, wouldn't all his years of hard work go to waste? When Yang Qindong saw that the other party wasn't moving, he didn't have any intention of persuading him further. Those who didn't know would naturally think that glass was very expensive. However, since the glass factory in Crimson City could already produce it in bulk, the cost of producing it was extremely low. It was just that outsiders didn't know much about it. After talking about the land and renovations, Yang Qindong continued, "There will be a large performance stage in the center of the Immortal Abode. At that time there will be storytelling, singing and dancing performances, and I can guarantee that they will all be new songs. When the time comes, just imagine how grand it will be. It won't be an exaggeration to say that even a single ticket will be hard to come by. In addition, there will be unique delicacies. You've already tasted potatoes today. Just this one dish alone can be used to make almost 20 different dishes. If you add in other delicacies, I'm sure the taste will be enough to make one salivate. Of course, the cost of performing the songs and dancing won't be low either. A rough estimate puts it at several tens of thousands of taels of silver. In addition, there will be the Yang family's Beyond Heaven Trading Company next to the restaurant. They will sell many things that the Great Ming Dynasty doesn't have, so they'll need to invest first. Even if they don't buy a lot of goods, the cost will still be no less than 100,000 taels of silver. All in all, 300,000 taels of silver is still barely enough. Furthermore, eunuch Wang doesn't need to take out anything. Chapter 58. After saying this, Yang Qindong took a sip from his teacup. His lips trembled a few times, giving off the impression that he was extremely distressed. If there really was an investment of 300,000 taels, giving away 10% of the profits for free was truly not a small sum. Roughly estimating, he would receive at least 3,000 taels of silver every month. This allowed Wang Zhen to understand Yang Qindong's boldness. Then what do you need this eunuch to do? Wang Zhen didn't believe that a free lunch would fall from the heavens. If there were no benefits for the other party, even if it was a temporary alliance, it wouldn't last long. Eunuch Wang is straightforward. What I need is safety. I need Eunuch Wang to ensure that the Immortal Abode and World Heaven Trading Company are absolutely safe. At the very least, no one can cause trouble here. In addition, the bulk of the goods are coming from the barbarians, and I have already ordered them to be shipped to the nearest Tianjin guard. This way the journey from there to the capital will be safe. I hope that Eunuch Wang can guarantee it. Of course, the brothers will also pay for the tea. Yang Qindong was waiting for Wang Zhen to ask him this question. One had to get something in return. This was just a transaction. With Yang Qindong's current strength, once he revealed his fangs, it wouldn't be difficult to ensure his safety. However, these were his private soldiers and he couldn't reveal them to others, at least not yet. Wang Zhen listened to Yang Qindong's request and pondered for a moment. He felt that this was not a difficult matter. He only needed to inform the Eastern Faction guards and the Brocade guards so that no one would cause trouble. This way he would be able to earn at least 3,000 taels of silver a month, which would be 30 to 40,000 taels of silver a year. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. Okay, it's a deal. Eunuch Wang is straightforward. Come, this lowly official will use tea in place of wine to toast you. Yang Qindong laughed in satisfaction. Ah, good. Wang Zhen seemed to be in a good mood. In his eyes, Yang Qindong was a god of wealth. Being on good terms with him was a matter of mutual benefit, so he was naturally happy. And from start to finish, Yang Qindong didn't show any intention of raising his rank. He just acted like a merchant, and this made Wang Zhen feel even more at ease. Wang Zhen liked power and money. But of course the thing he loved the most was still power. In this aspect, Yang Qindong did not have the slightest intention to compete with him. There were only benefits and no disputes, so Wang Zhen could naturally rest assured. Satisfied, Wang Zhen left. Yang Qindong looked at Xiao Yin, who came to clean up the table, and said, "Go, throw away that set of teacups." Pointing at the teacups that Wang Zhen had used, the sixth young master's face was filled with disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was still too weak and he didn't want the people of the Great Ming Dynasty to suffer because of him, Yang Qindong wouldn't have done such a thing so casually. Yes, Xiao Yin replied obediently. Then she pursed her lips and smiled. Clearly she found the sixth young master's pettiness funny. Oh, you've grown up. You actually dare to laugh at this young master. Since that's the case, are you ready to be spanked? He noticed Xiao Yin's gentle laughter. More importantly, she was laughing beautifully towards the end. Her entire body was trembling, causing her towering breasts to tremble as well. It was a powerful visual impact, and Yang Qindong couldn't help but feel his hands itch. He wanted to punish her using her parents. The so-called family law, which was what Yang Qindong said himself, was to spank her. Ever since he accidentally spanked Xiao Yin's, but while playing around, Yang Qindong liked the feeling of being fleshy. Xiao Yin didn't seem to be annoyed, and she even provoked the sixth young master for no reason. In this way, domestic discipline became popular. One was willing to be spanked and the other was willing to be spanked. It was truly amusing. At this moment, Yang Qindong wanted to use domestic discipline again. To put it bluntly, it was because his hands itched. When she heard about domestic discipline, Xiao Yin's pretty face turned red. While she was delighted, she still said, "Young master, don't." Xiao Yin knows she was wrong. "Do you know? It's too late now, ha." As he spoke, Yang Qindong walked closer with a big grin on his face like a big bad wolf. Little White Rabbit didn't seem to have any intention of running away. Instead, she stood there foolishly as if she was at his mercy. Her intention of asking for a spanking couldn't be more obvious. Yang Qindong knew that he could once again satisfy his touch, and a mischievous smile appeared on his face. However, all of this was lost as Tiger's Mane suddenly appeared. Tiger's Mane also knew that this wasn't the right time to appear, but he had no choice. Outside the Yang Manor, the young master, the second young master, and the rest of the Yang family had all arrived. They wanted to see the sixth young master. These were all direct descendants of the Yang family. Tiger's Mane didn't dare to stop them. "What's wrong?" Seeing Tiger's Mane appear, Yang Qindong immediately regained his calm expression. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he looked like a completely different person from when he was fooling around with Xiao Yin. Young master, the second young master, and the other young masters and young miss have all arrived. They are currently outside the manor. The people from the East faction guards have stopped them. Tiger's Mane lowered his head. As Yang Qindong's radiance grew brighter and brighter, his respect and reverence for the sixth young master grew with each passing day. Tiger's Mane no longer spoke as casually as before. Big brother and the others are finally willing to come? Yang Qindong let out a light snort. They were all blood-related brothers and they were all snobbish. Yesterday he was only a 9th rank official, and they all said that they were too busy to show up. Now that he was a 5th rank official, he was even higher than them. They immediately came over. This was the reality of society. Although he was somewhat displeased, Yang Qindong still decided to meet them. After all, they were still his family. Since he had taken over Yang Qindong's body, he naturally wanted to return some benefits. This way he would be able to face the world calmly after 100 years. Alright, tell the people from the East faction guards that this is the young master's elder brother and elder sister. They are not to stop them. Yes. Tiger's Mane respectfully replied and turned to leave. Xiao Yin immediately went to the main hall and began to clean up the tables and chairs. Outside the Yang family manor, Yang Gong, Yang Rang, Yang Shi, Yang Yang, Yang Guifeng, and the 5 brothers of the Yang family had all arrived. Standing at the side were 3rd sister Yang Jing, 4th sister Yang Mei, 5th sister Yang Li, and 6th sister Yang Qin. Aside from eldest sister Yang Fei and 7th sister Yang Duo, all of his family members were present. At this moment, everyone was standing outside the Yang manor. Seeing the people from the East faction guards blocking their way, they did not dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. They only glanced at the manor from time to time, expressing their eagerness to see 6th brother. Finally, amidst their anticipation, Tiger's Mane, dressed as a study companion, appeared. As soon as he approached, he said to the head of the East faction guards in charge of security, "These are the 6th young master's elder brother and elder sister. Please let them in." With the Yang manor's permission, the East faction guards let them in. Only then did Yang Gong and the others have the opportunity to enter the manor. Once they were free from the East faction guard's surveillance, the Yang brothers' expressions became somewhat arrogant, especially second brother Yang Rang. He said with an unhappy expression, "You must be Tiger's Mane. What is little 6th brother busy with? We are all here. Does he not know how to come out and welcome us? Why did he send a servant like you?" As the head of the Ministry of Rights and a 6th rank official, Yang Rang's authority was growing by the day. When he met Yang Gong, it was inevitable that he would argue with him, let alone a servant like Tiger's Mane. Tiger's Mane did not say anything. In his eyes there was only one master, and that was Yang Qindong, the 6th young master. As for the others, he would not pay attention to them. He did not interact much with them to avoid unnecessary suspicion. After complaining, he did not receive any response. At this moment, he just happened to walk to the front of the Yang manor's main entrance. Yang Rang felt a little embarrassed and said somewhat angrily, "Tiger's Mane, this official is talking to you. Do you hear me? You don't have any manners. Just stand there. You can leave when you know you're wrong." In his anger, Yang Rang treated this place as his own home. He scolded Tiger's Mane and the others without any psychological pressure. Tiger's Mane's footsteps became hesitant after being scolded like this. Then he remembered that Yang Rang was the second brother of the 6th young master. In the end, he stopped in his tracks and stood there without moving. He really looked like he was going to admit his mistake. The people guarding the main entrance of the Yang manor were Yang Wu and Yang Lu. When they saw Tiger's Mane being stopped, the two of them looked at each other. Then Yang Wu quietly disappeared, leaving Yang Lu standing there alone to keep watch. Second brother, 6th brother has been busy all day and is very tired. Besides, we are family. It is understandable that he did not come out to welcome us. There is no need to be so serious. 6th sister, Yang Qin, who had always been disliked by others, saw that Yang Rang was taking advantage of the situation again. She immediately spoke with displeasure. "What? You say that I am serious? 6th sister, who do you think you are? You are the only one in our family who married a businessman. Do you know how much face you have brought to our ancestors? Now you still have the face to speak here?" Yang Rang was well educated and worked in the Ministry of Rights. His language skills were not to be underestimated. With just one sentence he forced Yang Qin to be at a loss. Then tears formed in her eyes and she looked like she was about to cry. "Second brother, we are all family. Why do you have to speak to sixth sister like this? Eldest brother Yang Gong could not stand it anymore and wanted to mediate. Eldest brother, it is not that I want to criticize you, but your temper is too good. That is why our Yang family is not what it used to be. If you ask me, sometimes you have to take care of people. Otherwise, without rules, there will be no order or propriety. At that time, we will only be bullied. Yang Rang didn't care about his elder brother Yang Gong at all. In his eyes, his big brother was born well. He was the eldest son of the Yang family. That was why he was a sixth-rank official. If it was him, he would be at least a fifth-rank official. Well said. A voice suddenly sounded from within the manor. Yang Qindong, who was dressed in green, strode out. Second brother is right. Without rules, there will be no order or decorum. Otherwise, we will only be bullied. But sixth brother wants to ask, previously when third sister, fourth sister, and seventh sister were bullied, dare I ask, what were you doing? Chapter 59. It was a slap in the face. Yang Qindong had just stepped forward when he gave the men of the Yang family a slap in the face. His interrogative expression made the Yang brothers' faces turn red. The fourth brother Yang had his head lowered. Just yesterday he was still doubting Yang Qindong for not being able to control seventh sister. But they had gone to beat Wang Go early in the morning, and had even given his outrageous mother, Lady Yan, a horsewhip. Yet nothing had happened to him until now. Yang Qindong had used his actions to show his determination to protect the rights of the Yang family. In contrast, as the fourth brother, not only did he not support him, he even doubted him. Now that he thought about it, it really made him blush with shame. Not only the fourth brother, but even the eldest brother, third brother, and fifth brother's faces were flushed red. They clearly knew that they were in the wrong in this matter and could not refute anything. However, only the second son Yang Rang said with an indifferent expression, Lil, 6, you're wrong. Married women are like spilled water. Since they're already married, they're no longer part of the Yang family. What does it have to do with us whether their life is good or bad? Nonsense. With a furious shout, Yang Qindong was really angry this time. His shout shocked the crowd. At the same time, they were also unable to comprehend his shout. Yang Qindong had become a county official at the age of 13 and was now personally bestowed the status of a high scholar by the emperor. How could someone with such a status speak such filthy words? All the brothers and sisters could not understand. Only Qiao Yin, Tiger's mane, and the other Yang family servants had a matter-of-fact expression. Their master should be like this. When he should be rewarded, when he should be punished, when he should be happy, when he should be scolded, when he should be scolded, he should be scolded. The scene quieted down, but after 2 breaths of time, Yang Rang, whose face was already filled with anger, suddenly jumped up and roared at Yang Qindong, Little sixth, what did you just say? You dare to be so disrespectful to your second brother? Do you know that you should be beaten? As he shouted, Yang Rang really rushed towards the place where Yang Qindong was standing. However, Tiger's man Yang Wu and Yang Lu had already formed a human wall in front of Yang Rang, making it impossible for him to get close to the sixth young master. Unable to rush forward, Yang Rang could not vent the anger in his heart. Instead, he bared his fangs and brandished his claws at the 3 Yang family guards. In just a few moments, his clothes were torn open, making him look like a village woman throwing a tantrum in a fight. Enough, the 3 of you step aside. I want to see how this young master's second brother will attack an official of the imperial court. All right? Yang Qindong shouted angrily when he saw how flustered and exasperated second Yang was. What's more, he's a court official who's 1 level higher than him. Once an order was given, it had to be carried out. After Tiger's man and the other 2 heard this, they dodged to the side. Yang Rang, who was not prepared at all, missed and fell to the ground with a thud, making intimate contact with the ground. Pfft. The Yang family sisters finally could not hold it in anymore and covered their mouths as they chuckled. After being laughed at, Yang Rang felt humiliated. He quickly got up and wanted to rush towards Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong had long seen through Yang Rang's appearance of strength. He sneered, "Come on, try and hit me. Let's see if the East faction guards outside will arrest you and send you to the Imperial Edict." Yang Rang, who was about to make a move, immediately collapsed like a deflated ball when he heard about the East faction guards and the Imperial Edict. He stood there not knowing whether he should move or not. Okay, we're all brothers. It was just a joke. Let's forget about it. At this time, Yang Gong began to stand up and play the good guy again. Yang Gong's personality was like this. Even though he saw his second brother suffer, he was still very happy. However, he did not forget his father's words before his death, that the Yang family should be united. As the eldest brother, all he could do was follow his father's orders. Everyone was used to their eldest brother's living mud, so naturally, they did not feel that there was anything wrong with his words. However, Yang Qindong was not used to it. He shook his head and said, "No. This young master is not joking. I'm asking you." Third sister, fourth sister, and seventh sister suffered in the in-laws' house. Why didn't you do anything about it? Is it really like what second brother said, that a married girl is like water that has been poured out? Is there really no need to ask about it? If that's the case, why do they still have the surname Yang? Is the affection that we grew up with gone? This is clearly a sign of cold-bloodedness and incompetence. If that's the case, now that we have separated from each other, there is no need for us to interact with each other or help each other. Yang Qindong took the opportunity to express his own opinion. If it was yesterday Yang Qindong dared to say this, his brothers would definitely have reprimanded him, saying that it was easy for him to speak while standing. However, after what happened in the Wang family this morning, no one dared to say this. They already knew that their sixth brother was a man of his words. In comparison, they were indeed much more incompetent. At this moment, all they could do was to lower their heads. Even the second brother, Yang Rang, calmed down a lot. He thought about how Yang Qindong beat up Wang Go in the morning. He thought about how this person was greatly favored by the emperor, and was even a secondary class fifth-rank official, one rank higher than him. He thought that the current little six could no longer be treated as a younger brother. No one spoke. Only third sister Yang Jing and fourth sister Yang Mei stood there crying quietly. Just before this morning they were still living in their in-laws' house, where each day felt like a year. However, when Wang Go's matter came out, their situation changed. Especially when their in-laws sent people to investigate. They learned that Wang Go and his mother, Madame Yen, were beaten because they were not good to Yang Qindong's seventh sister, Yang Duo. Instantly they became concerned about their madams. When they learned that their madam wanted to go to the Yang family village to see their sixth brother, no one dared to stop her. They immediately agreed. This was the general trend. Yang Qindong beat Wang Go and his mother. Not only he did not receive any punishment from the emperor, on the contrary, he was promoted to the 7th level. None of the civil and military officials in the imperial court said anything bad about Yang Qindong. On the contrary, they took a lot of potatoes home. After receiving benefits, they said that Wang Go was too harsh on Yang Duo and deserved to be beaten. Once these rumors spread, who would dare to be dissatisfied with the Yang family? Not to mention deliberately causing trouble, it was already good enough that no one came looking for trouble. As a result, third sister Yang Jing and fourth sister Yang Mei finally had the chance to leave their in-laws' house and come to the Yang family village to meet with their brothers and sisters. And all of this was thanks to their sixth brother Yang Qindong, who had just come to the capital. If not for him, who knew what kind of suffering they would have had to endure. Yang Qindong couldn't bear to see his two sisters crying, so he signaled to Qiaoyin with his eyes. Qiaoyin immediately walked over and helped third sister and fourth sister into the central room with fifth sister, sixth sister, Yang Qin. After the four sisters entered the central room, Yang Qindong looked at his five brothers and said, "Let's go. If there's anything you want to say, we can talk inside." Turning around, Yang Qindong led the way in. Behind him was eldest brother Yang Gong and the others. Last was second brother Yang Rang, whose face was pale. Although he hated his sixth brother for not giving him face, he wanted to know what had happened in the Yang family village. As a sixth-rank official, it was necessary for him to know what was going on in the court. In the central room, everyone was seated according to their size. But it was worth mentioning that the one sitting at the head was Yang Qindong, not eldest brother Yang Gong. It was true that this was the Yang family village, but it was built by Yang Qindong. He was the owner, so it was appropriate for him to sit at the head of the table. Everyone seemed to have some doubts about this, but because of Yang Qindong's display of strength, they tactfully didn't ask anything, but their gazes were clearly pressing. There were some things that Yang Qindong didn't want to be so clear about, but since his brothers had objections, he had to say them. Brothers, there is one thing that sixth brother needs to clarify first. Although this Yang family village is called the Yang family village, it is different from the Yang family village in Jianing Prefecture. That Yang family village is jointly owned by us brothers, but the one below us is sixth brothers. The Yang family village in the capital had 2,000 mu of fertile land. And it wasn't far from the capital, so its value could be imagined. Now that they heard that Yang Qindong had taken it for himself, the five brothers' expressions immediately changed. But before they could ask anything, Yang Qindong continued, "Sixth brother knows what you brothers are thinking, but I must say that all of the investment in this Yang family village is sixth brother's alone, spending a total of 2,000 taels of gold. This is all from my partnership with cousin Yang Fu, the restaurant in Jianing Prefecture, and the newspaper Yang Bao. Not only that, sixth brother will also be opening an immortal abode restaurant and a trading company in the capital. These two projects should cost at least 300,000 taels of silver. These matters have already been reported to His Majesty today, and eunuch Wang Zhen and cousin Yang Fu also have 10% of the shares." He wouldn't rest until his words shocked everyone to death. Yang Qindong laid out his plans for the future. Since they were interested in a mere Yang family village, if he didn't make things clear beforehand, all sorts of trouble would come knocking on his door in the future. As for eunuch Wang Zhen's shares, they probably wouldn't dare to casually reveal such a big matter. Originally, when Yang Qindong said that the Yang manor had nothing to do with the brothers, they wanted to object. They also wanted to ask where the money to buy the manor came from if it had nothing to do with them. But when they heard that Yang Qindong had invested 300,000 taels in a restaurant and a trading company, they were so frightened that they didn't know what to say. If he could take out 300,000 taels of silver so easily, then this little Yang family village really didn't count for much. Not to mention he had such a close relationship with Wang Zhen. From the looks of it, anyone who wanted to cause trouble for him was courting death. Yang Qindong saw the expressions on his brothers' faces change again and again, and he couldn't help but feel a wave of satisfaction in his heart. He had purposely brought up Wang Zhen's name in order to frighten them, and it seemed that it had been quite effective. Chapter 60. The central room fell into silence because of Yang Qindong's words. After a long while, Yang Gong, the eldest brother, asked in an uncertain tone, "Can Yang Bao and a restaurant really make that much money?" Yang Qindong obviously wouldn't say that most of the money was stolen by Gao Xiong and the others from the sea. Thus he could only nod. Every time Yang Bao publishes, the demand exceeds the supply. Naturally it makes money. That's right, Wang Zhen also has 20% of the shares. Hearing that even Yang Bao had a share of Wang Zhen's shares, the brothers didn't ask any more questions. That was an existence they couldn't afford to offend. If they took a detour, they wouldn't be afraid of not being able to avoid it. Not to mention taking the initiative to provoke it. Seeing that everyone was silent, Yang Qindong continued, "As for Jianing Mansion's Yang village, we'll still follow mother's instructions when she left. The profits there will be divided into 6 parts, one for us 6 brothers. However, that village isn't very big and the amount of money we can earn in a year is limited. It's not very possible to make a fortune from that. Since 6th brother already has the Yang village in the capital, we don't need the shares there. Let the 5 brothers divide it." Yang Qindong said magnanimously. After deducting all kinds of expenses, the annual profit of the Yang family manor in Jianing Prefecture was only between 1,000 and 2,000 taels of silver. If the 5 brothers were to share it equally, each of them would only get 300 to 400 taels of silver. This amount of money was really not enough for him at the moment. After discussing the ownership of the village, Yang Qindong's gaze fell on the 4 sisters. "The Yang village in Jianing Mansion has nothing to do with you sisters. You rely on the dowry to survive in your in-laws' family. Without income, even a mountain of gold and silver will be emptied. This won't do." Shaking his head, Yang Qindong knew the importance of money. People said that money could make the devil push the millstone. There were even people who said that money could make the millstone push the devil. From this, it could be seen how important money was. The reason why the elder sister's status in their in-laws' family was declining day by day, other than the Yang family's weak power, it was also because they didn't have enough money. They were unable to establish their own power and consolidate their position. If he wanted to change it, it would be difficult to solve the problem by just beating him up. There might be a reason this time, but what about the next time? Yang Qindong couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be held accountable every time he hit someone. Therefore he thought of a way to solve the problem once and for all, and that was to pay. With enough money to rely on, no one would dare to look down on them anymore. 3rd elder sister, 4th elder sister, 5th elder sister and 6th elder sister, in the future, I'll give each of you a monthly allowance. I'll give each of you 1,000 taels of silver first. If you have any other urgent matters, feel free to tell me and I'll find a way to solve it. Also, it's the same for eldest sister and 7th sister. You can help me inform them later. Yang Qindong looked at the four sisters with a smile. Of course, if you feel that your life isn't going your way and want to leave your current in-laws, you can also say so. If others don't want to make the decision, I'll make the decision. If others don't want to care, I'll care. If necessary, I can even ask His Majesty to make the decision for you. When the time comes and you're divorced, you can find another one that suits your heart. It's not easy to find a three-legged toad, but there are plenty of two-legged men. Yang Qindong habitually said some of the language of the later generations. When he said this, the girls immediately burst into laughter. Then third elder sister Yang Jing, who wasn't living well, pursed her lips and said, "Sixth younger brother is joking again. Third elder sister is now over 30 years old and has 2 children. How can she divorce and get married? There's nothing impossible about it. Everyone has the right to pursue their own happiness. There are men, there are women. In short, if you're not satisfied with your life, you can come find me. I'll make the decision for you." Yang Qindong shook his head. He really wanted to refute his third elder sister's way of thinking. He wanted to say that in his era, there were many women in their 40s and 50s who divorced. But in the end he didn't say it. After all, it was better to tear down 10 temples than to tear down a single marriage. This was a way of thinking that had existed since ancient times and couldn't be changed in a short period of time. When he said this, his 4 sisters, including Qiao Yin, couldn't help but shed tears. In this era, it really wasn't easy to find a man who understood women so well. Especially Qiao Yin, who was proud of being able to follow by the 6th young master's side. The 4 sisters were very happy. They could get a monthly allowance of 1,000 taels of silver. With this money they could do whatever they wanted in their in-laws' house. It was all their own money, so they could use it to uphold justice. They could also use it to rope in more people. Presumably, their future days would be filled with anticipation. In contrast, the 5 brothers' expressions were much more unsightly. How did this sound like something their 6th younger brother would say? Yang Qindong was clearly the eldest brother. Not only did he sound like the eldest brother, but Yang Qindong was also very strong-willed. When it came to money, the 5 of them added together couldn't even compare to his pinky finger. Ever since their parents passed away, their source of income had practically been cut off. Apart from a few hundred taels of silver from the Yang clan manor in the Yang clan's old residence, the rest was their official salary. Of course, it wasn't a problem for a small family to have that money. But for the 5 brothers, which one of them didn't have a wife and concubines? There were dozens of people in the family, so how could they use the money? Comparing official positions? Yesterday they could use this to suppress Yang Qindong. But now, the other party was a minor 5th-rank official, while the best among them was a major 6th-rank official. They still couldn't suppress him. Like this, what else could they use to talk to their 6th younger brother? Unable to make sense of things, they immediately felt bored and uninterested. Take second brother Yang Rang for example. At this moment he wanted to get up and leave. But if not for the fact that he still hadn't figured out the reason for the change in the Yang clan manor and why there were so many East faction guards outside, he would have already gotten up and left. Little 6th younger brother, what's going on today? Even the emperor came to the Yang clan manor, and so many civil and military officials? Yang Rang saw that if he didn't ask, Yang Qindong wouldn't tell him. So he couldn't help but ask. Nothing big. This wasn't a secret, and he believed that it would soon spread to all the streets of the capital. Since that was the case, it didn't matter to tell his brothers. Immediately Yang Qindong roughly told them the whole story. When he said that the potatoes they planted could produce more than 20 dan per mu, the 5 brothers were shocked again. At this moment, they finally understood why their 6th younger brother suddenly turned over a new leaf. He was promoted and had nothing to do with an official position. They finally understood what was going on. Yang Rang felt that there was no need to stay. Why did he feel that staying would be a slap in the face? So he got up and said goodbye. When Yang Rang said that he wanted to leave, eldest brother Yang Gong also said that, followed by 3rd brother, 4th brother and 5th brother. They knew that their words today had hurt their brothers. If they stayed now, their faces would only be ugly. Since that was the case, it was better to go their separate ways first. They could slowly make up for it in the future. Alright, before you leave, each of you can bring back 10 jin of potatoes to try. I'm already in the capital, and there will be many opportunities for us to get along in the future. This time won't make a difference. Right, 4th brother, stay. I have something to discuss with you. Being called out, 4th brother Yang Yang was stunned at first. Then he said happily, okay. I don't have anything to do when I go back, so I'll stay here and disturb 6th brother. The other eldest brother, second brother, third brother, and fifth brother looked at fourth brother Yang Yang enviously. Then, led by Tiger's Mane and the others, they took the potatoes and left the manor. Fourth brother Yang Yang asked excitedly and curiously, "Sixth brother, why are you looking for fourth brother?" "It's like this. After dinner tonight, take me to the red light district in the capital to take a look," Yang Chendong said casually. The red light district. It referred to the red light district. It was usually a place where people sought pleasure. In other words, it was a brothel. Of course, there were also high-class places in the red light district. Those places sold their skills and not their bodies. They were specially provided for talented women to live there. For example, Qin Yuan in the late Ming Dynasty was a courtesan. She was once a courtesan. The reason why he kept fourth brother was because he knew that this brother of his was a hedonistic son. He was an official and did not have a proper job. Furthermore, he was a man in the prime of his life. He should be familiar with such places. As expected, when fourth brother Yang Yang heard that he wanted to take a look at the red light district, he immediately revealed an understanding look. Then he smiled slyly, "That's right. Sixth brother is already 18 years old. You're probably still a virgin. You should go and take a look." Yang Chendong did not know what to say to fourth brother's explicit words. He could only shake his head and ignore him. Instead, he ran over to talk to his sisters. The four sisters had also heard the conversation between Yang Chendong and fourth brother Yang Yang. When they saw the sixth young master running over, they naturally smiled. Xiao Yin stood to the side with a face full of resentment. She seemed to be saying that if the young master needed anything, he should have just come to her. Why did he have to go to such a place? That would not have a good reputation. Looking at everyone's eyes, he knew that they had misunderstood him. Yang Chendong had no choice but to spread out his hands and explain, "Sisters, sixth brother is not that bad. This time I have a purpose. You know that I want to build a restaurant. How can a big restaurant not have singing and dancing? I'm going to look for talents." "So it's like that," Yang Chendong said with a deadpan expression. Putting aside whether or not the sisters really believed him, Xiao Yin was the first to believe him. Xiao Yin was the first person to believe him, because if the young master really needed help, he would definitely look for her and not go to the red light district to cause trouble. After explaining, Yang Chendong did not mention this matter again. Instead, he asked the sisters about some anecdotes in the capital. Because Yang Chendong had helped them vent their anger and even gave them money, the four elder sisters felt that their relationship with each other had become closer in an instant. This time there was really nothing that they didn't talk about. As their relationship grew closer, Yang Chendong suddenly had an idea. He had Xiao Yin go to the warehouse in the rear courtyard and take out some women's bras, panties, and kipayos for the sisters to change into. Chapter 61. During the Ming Dynasty, the ancient customs were not extremely strict. At least, they did not issue a no-exposure order like the Tang Gaozong. They also liked to wear skirts, and there were many patterns such as the moonlight skirt, phoenix tail skirt, acacia skirt, and pleated skirt, made of whole satin. This kind of skirt was flat in the front and had decorative lace around it. The inside was filled with colorful embroidery patterns, and the left and right sides had fine pleats. The most was 150 to 160 pleats. However, they were still not used to clothes like the qipao that exposed the calves. Compared to the thin, revealing skin of modern women, it was impossible to catch up. For this reason, Yang Chendong could be said to have persuaded a lot. It was like a woman's beauty was for others to see. Women were magical creatures in the hands of the Creator, and beauty was their nature. Since that was the case, why not find a way to show it? Wrap it up every day and admire yourself? A woman's true youth was only so many years, and it would pass in a blink of an eye. If they did not cherish it, they would be letting themselves down. Moreover, such a qipao could show a woman's perfect figure. Women who wore qipao generally had to be dignified. They had to stand straight, stick out their chest, and tuck in their stomach. They had to walk steadily as if they were strolling in the courtyard. When they sat, they had to be upright and not hunched. After a long time, they would all become young ladies of noble families. The advantage was that it could also improve one's personality. Wearing an elegant and beautiful qipao, a woman's heart would be affected, and she would become more demure, elegant, and feminine. Women who were in a hurry or who did not stand properly with four legs were not suitable to wear a qipao. Wearing a qipao could also show that they had good nutrition. This was because women who wore qipao needed to have lustrous skin, white with rosy skin, a voluptuous and graceful figure and delicate skin. Wearing a qipao like this, the clothes fit perfectly and were flawless. If one was sallow and skinny, they would not be able to wear a qipao no matter how good it was. At the same time, the rate of turning heads was high. A gentleman was used for those who understood him, and a woman was dressed up for those who liked her. Wearing a qipao would naturally attract countless eyes of the opposite sex. Who knew, it might even be a marriage decision. In short, the qipao was the clothes that could show the curvaceous beauty of Eastern women. After saying so much, the four sisters were somewhat moved, but no one tried it first. In the end, Yang Qindong had no choice but to use his trump card. She said that this was a tool to make money, and in the end, it would be paraded throughout the capital. If the four big sisters refused to wear it, how would others know of its benefits? If they couldn't sell it, wouldn't they suffer a loss? How would they be able to pay their monthly allowance? Of course, Yang Hodong just wanted to use this opportunity to help his four sisters regain their confidence. If he really wanted to promote it, he could get other open-minded women to wear it. It wouldn't be difficult to get a model team. That way the effect would be better. Not to mention, once the immortal abode caught fire, the qipao would catch fire as well. He was extremely confident about this. Sure enough, when it came to money, the four sisters finally made up their minds. Sixth brother had helped them so much. If he was not even willing to pay this small price, it would be too unreasonable. Thus, the four sisters, including Xiao Yin, entered the fitting room with red faces and changed into qipaos. Yang Qindong and fourth brother Yang Yang sat in the main hall, sipping tea as they waited to be the first audience. After the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, the 5 women finally appeared in the main hall. When they walked out, because it was their first time wearing it, they were naturally a little embarrassed, even a little bashful. However, they didn't know that this made them look even more charming. At least, that was how Yang Qindong saw it. Yang Yang, on the other hand, was staring at them with wide eyes, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. It was hard to tell if it was tea leaves or something else. In any case, after the 5 women changed into qipaos, their auras completely changed. They gave off a completely different feeling, as if they were fairies that had descended to the mortal world. Sixth brother, there should be more of these things, right? Give me a few. I'll have your sisters-in-law wear them when we get home. They'll definitely be beautiful. Yang Yang, who reacted, didn't bother to wipe the saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. He grabbed Yang Qindong's arm and said anxiously. Yang Qindong, who was being grabbed, hurriedly nodded. Okay, I'll give one to each sister-in-law as a greeting gift. Only then did Yang Yang stop, satisfied. The 4 sisters also had a shy look on their faces. When they wore the qipaos, it gave them a feeling as if they had returned to their youth, so beautiful and bright. Of course, whether or not they had truly returned to their youth was another matter. At least in terms of mentality, they had returned to their youth. For a moment, the 5 women were unwilling to take off their qipaos. Moreover, their faces were bright and full of smiles. It was unknown how long it had been since such a smile had appeared on their faces. Like the 4 sisters, Hu Yen also had a smile on her face. Grandfather and father returned to the mansion at noon and were all smiling. Then, the housekeeper came to inform them that the whole family was having a meal tonight. A meal gathering. This kind of thing was common in large clans, but there were basically rules and regulations. For example, it would only appear during major festivals and happy events such as the New Year. But today was not the New Year, nor was it a festival, but they were having a meal together. This could only mean one thing, that something good had happened. Curiosity was human nature, especially for women. Hu Yen asked little Qing to inquire about it and gave half a tael of silver. The same was true for large families. If they wanted to win people's hearts and make more people like you until they were used by you, they had to give benefits. The servants had to live and they had to live. How could they do without money? With half a tael of silver, he quickly found out the whole story from one of Hu Xiangning's personal attendants. It turned out that what Hu Xiangning did today made the emperor happy, and he was rewarded with a spring-embroidered saber. This saber was not an imperial sword, but it still showed how much the emperor valued Hu Xiangning. With a good impression, it would be natural for Hu Xiangning to be promoted in the future. And the reason for the saber was naturally related to Yang Qindong. When the maid little Qing said that it was all because the 6th young master of the Yang clan had sounded the drum, Miss Hu Yen realized that the talent she had been hiding in her heart had actually arrived in the capital. Most importantly, little Qing also found out that it was the 6th young master who had presented the auspicious item today. It was actually a grain that could produce more than 20 dan of grain per mu. This could solve the problem of the common people's stomachs. On the spot, he was conferred the title of the Crown Prince's Chamberlain, a minor 5th rank official. Miss, the 6th young master of the Yang clan is only 18 years old, but he is already a minor 5th rank official. This kind of thing seems to only happen during the founding of the country. Tiske. This 6th young master is truly formidable. Little Qing really wants to meet this person. Seeing the infatuated look on Little Qing's face, Hu Yan pursed her lips and smiled. What's wrong? Is Little Qing in love again? Then do you want me to be your matchmaker and talk to him? She originally wanted to tease Little Qing, but who would have thought that Little Qing would agree without blushing? Okay, Little Qing will be the matchmaker. When the time comes, Little Qing will be able to marry you. What? How could Hu Yan be willing to let the matter go when she heard that the topic had turned to her? The two of them immediately broke out into laughter. After a while, when the two of them had enough fun, Little Qing caught her breath and said, Miss, you don't know? This 6th young master is not only talented but also sincere. What do you mean sincere? You haven't even met him, so how can you come to such a conclusion? Hu Yan shook her head in disbelief. She only thought that Little Qing thought that everything about Yang Qindong was good because of her admiration. But the facts proved that there were many people fishing for fame. Often, the people on the street would say how good the person was, but only when they really came into contact with the person would they know that the person was nothing more than a beast in human clothing. The good points were deliberately shown and could not stand the test of time. No, miss, is this 6th young master's true temperament? You don't know, but just this morning he went to the vicinity of Lilikang and beat up his 7th brother-in-law. Little Qing remembered that when she heard the attendant talk about this matter, she couldn't help but have a happy expression on her face. In her mind, she imagined what kind of demeanor Yang Qindong would have when doing these things. Hu Yan originally thought that Little Qing was doing it because of her admiration. When she heard the story, she immediately asked, Wait, you said that the 6th young master beat up his 7th brother-in-law. What happened? I heard about this from Master's personal attendant. It's like this. Little Qing then told Hu Yan everything she knew. When she heard it, Hu Yan's eyes were filled with anger. Then her worry turned into joy. She even waved her arm and said, Good, that's a good beating. A man who treats his wife badly deserves to be beaten. All right, that Wang Go is an official in the Hanlin Academy. Will it be okay to beat him up like this? No. This is where the 6th young master is smart. He actually said that it was because he wanted to tell the emperor about Potato's good fortune, but he had no way. Unfortunately, he came to the Wang residence. He thought that since it was his 7th brother-in-law, he should have a way. Who knew that he would hit someone by accident? When Little Qing said this, she giggled. In her heart, she praised the 6th young master's ability to change the situation was really amazing. There is such a thing. After hearing it, Hu Yan was also happy. Then she said happily, Good, it's really good that you don't have to be sued after beating up such a bastard. At this moment, Hu Yan was obviously standing with Yang Qindong. When you truly love someone, everything that person does is right. But very quickly she became unhappy again. Little Qing, who still had a dreamy look on her face, suddenly saw the change in Miss's expression and couldn't help but worry. Miss, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell somewhere? As she spoke, she even reached out to touch Hu Yan's forehead. Chapter 62. No. Hu Yan shook her head and dodged the jade pendant. She rested her chin on her hands and said bitterly, Little Qing, do you think that when a woman marries into her husband's family, she really has to resign herself to her fate? Think about how lively the Yang family's 7th young miss used to be. She was also doted on by everyone in her family. But after marrying into the Wang family, she actually has to work as a maid and servant. She can't even do anything about it. It's really too hard. Knowing what Little Qing was worried about, Little Qing quickly shook her head and said, That won't happen. If young miss gets married, won't master and lord stand up for you? No one will bully you. No. Hu Yan shook her head stubbornly. The Yang family's 7th young miss's identity is also not simple. Her father is Lord Yang Rong, who is not inferior to my grandfather at all. In fact, he is even stronger. But doesn't she still have to suffer? Sigh, Little Qing, I suddenly don't want to get married. Hearing Hu Yan's words, Xiaoqing didn't know how to persuade her. She sat down with her hands on her cheeks and looked out the window. Women are destined to marry, and they have to give birth to children for those men. This is our fate. But life is also divided into good and bad. If you really marry someone like Wang Go, then wouldn't your life be ruined? Wouldn't it be better not to marry and be a young lady for the rest of your life? Hu Yin shook her head. This matter had a great impact on her heart. It actually gave birth to a kind of premarital phobia that modern people had. Seeing that Hu Yin was really disheartened, little Qing was afraid. If that was really the case, then Master and Lord would definitely punish her. What should she do then? Thinking of this, she was also a little terrified. But then a person's name jumped into her mind. Young miss, you can marry the Yang family's young master. You see, for his sister's matter, he did not hesitate to break the law and beat someone to seek justice. This kind of man should be trustworthy. Marry the Yang family's sixth young master? Is he really worth entrusting your life to? At this moment, Hu Yin began to seriously consider this question. Red Light Street. It was located in the outer city of the capital, near the Chongwen Gate. At night, this place was brightly lit, and countless high officials and wealthy merchants could be seen here. The Ming Dynasty had rules that forbade civil and military officials from sleeping at night or going to prostitutes. Every official who slept in a brothel would be flogged 60 times. The matchmaker would be reduced by 1 level, which meant that he would have to be flogged 60 times. Even the person who introduced him would have to be flogged. The sons and grandsons of officials were also punished with 60 strokes of the plank. There was once a commander of Guangdong's Hainan Guard who came to the capital to stay there and prostitute. Shiju Bengshi Weiyuan Guard. It meant that the people with military positions were not allowed to sleep, prostitute, or marry the musicians of the musical house. Otherwise, they would be transferred to other guard stations. However, even if it was a punishment, he would still receive his salary. There was a song about a woman who did not know the sorrow of her country's destruction. She sang the flowers of the backyard across the river. Du Mu's 2 lines of poetry nailed the singers, including the prostitutes, onto the pillar of shame as if they were born cheap. However, this was just a theory of femme fatale. Who did Shang Nu sing for? Wasn't it all for the meat-eaters who shouldered the rise and fall of the country? If there wasn't anything they wanted to hear, would the singers be so bored as to sing to the water? Sing to the trees? Sing to the wind? To put it bluntly, these poor women were just scapegoats for the incapable and unprincipled men. In this regard, Yang Qindong's view was indeed different from other people's. In his view, existence was reasonable. Just like prostitutes, they had never stopped since ancient times. Just like when the Republic was first established, they disappeared under a serious blow, but didn't they reappear as soon as the economy developed? This was originally a demand. Since there was a demand, there should be a response. As long as it was used well, it could also reduce some crimes. Of course, it should be regulated, such as paying taxes, having regular physical examinations to ensure safety, and so on. Of course, with Yang Qindong's current status, it was impossible for him to bring up these things. That would be looking for trouble. The red light district was different from the ordinary willow alleys. The legal control here was much weaker. Most of the people here had skills, and most of them sold their skills instead of their bodies. Unless they really liked each other, it was another matter. Because of this, there was no need to be so afraid of officials appearing here. Tonight, Yang Qindong came here with the mentality of looking around, and at the same time looking for talents. As the saying goes, every profession has its own master. What did this master refer to? Of course it was talent. Just like those female celebrities in the future, there were good ones and clean ones, but what kind of state most of them were in, only they themselves knew. In fact, deep down they didn't want to become that kind of person, but in the big picture, what could they do? If they weren't taken, there was no show to take. In this way, everyone else was popular like this and the successors didn't matter. But it was undeniable that no matter how they became popular, they had a certain level of ability and could be considered talents. On the way here from the Yang family village, Yang Qindong had already heard from his 4th brother that there were 2 very famous courtesans in the red light district. They were famous for their skills and were the guests of many distinguished people. Most importantly, they really sold their skills instead of their bodies. To be able to persist in this kind of environment made Yang Qindong admire them very much. The first place he came today was called Jiu Yi Fong. As everyone knew, the ancients said that there were 6 arts: etiquette, music, archery, imperial, calligraphy, and mathematics. It was rumored that the courtesan Lady Xiang had 9 arts, especially dancing. Her figure had made many men forget to go home and forget to eat. Just like what his 4th brother said, Lady Xiang was born with a strange fragrance that made people intoxicated. Just by getting close to her, it could make people's thoughts run wild. It was indescribably beautiful. Regarding this, Yang Qindong believed. In the future he would often hear people saying that a certain person had a body fragrance. This wasn't surprising. It was just that her sweat had a special smell that made people smell fragrant. Even though he had heard of it, he had been busy completing all kinds of missions back then and had never come into contact with such a woman. Now that he had the opportunity, he wanted to experience it. Yang Yang was originally a profligate son. Naturally, he would come to places like Jiao Yifang often. However, because he didn't have a lot of money, he didn't feel satisfied every time he spent there. Thus, he didn't leave a deep impression on others. Now that his sixth brother was paying by his side, Yang Yang's face was filled with excitement. Tonight it was time for him to show off. It was also time for him to spend lavishly. The carriage arrived at the entrance of Jiao Yifang. After the carriage stopped, Yang Yang excitedly lifted the curtains and went out. Taking this opportunity, Yang Qindong noticed that the entrance of Jiao Yifang was close to 3 zhang wide. It showed how deep the foundation of this place was. At that time, how was a person's ability? It could be seen from the width of the entrance. This was the first impression that Yang Qindong had. After alighting from the carriage, Tiger's mane and Beta Persei were left behind. Yang San and Yang Si, who were driving the carriage, stayed behind to observe who was coming and going. With the help of his brothers, Yang Qindong, who was also wearing green clothes, walked into the main Jiao Yifang with a folding fan in his hand. As soon as they entered the gate, a manservant came to greet them and lead the way. After walking for another 20 steps, they arrived in front of a large courtyard that was 2 stories high. They hadn't even entered the courtyard yet. Before they even entered, they could already hear the chatter of orioles. "Oh, isn't this Master Yang Si?" A well-dressed woman in her 30s was welcoming guests at the door. When she saw Yang Yang, she recognized his identity at a glance. She immediately pretended to be surprised and shouted. Then, a fragrance wafted into Yang Yang's nose and she rushed over just like that. Haha. When Yang Yang saw this scene, he first looked up to the sky and laughed. Then, he naturally allowed the woman to rush in front of him and hold his arm. Casually, he put 5 taels of silver into the woman's wrist. Then he asked naturally, "Is Lady Xiang here?" Yang Yang had never been so generous in the past when he gave out 5 taels of silver. As a result, the woman in charge of welcoming the guests had a happy expression on her face. She said in a coquettish voice, "Fourth Master Yang's luck is good. Tonight Lady Xiang will play a song. I'm afraid it will start soon." "Is that so? That's good. Just let someone lead the way." Yang Yang smiled and nodded. Then he touched the woman's chin and laughed loudly as he entered the courtyard. At this time, another maid came forward with a lantern and led Yang Si and the others into the courtyard. As Yang Qindong walked, he said to Yang Qindong, who was following beside him, "That was the receptionist just now. She is a female artist who is no longer popular. In fact, when they were young they had some fame. However, now that they are old they can no longer dance, sing or play. Moreover, they were born lowly and had nowhere else to go. Thus, they decided to do this kind of business. Speaking of which, they are quite pitiful. Because of this, when the guests have the ability to take care of them, they will usually be given some silver." As if he was afraid that his 6th brother would blame him for giving out 5 taels of silver, Yang Yang explained. "It's fine. 4th brother can do as you see fit. The silver is not a problem." Yang Qindong smiled and shook his head. To him, 5 taels of silver was really nothing. If Gao Xiong and the others went out to rob, who knew how many 5 taels of silver would come into his account? Seeing Yang Qindong's indifferent expression, Yang Yang's heart was filled with confidence. He then said to the young girl who was leading the way, "This prince is not lacking in money. Find a good place, this is your reward." As he spoke, 2 taels of silver were handed over. "Thank you for the reward. This servant will lead you to the best place." Seeing how generous the reward was to her, the maidservant's face was filled with joy, and she became even more attentive as she led the way. The courtyard was brightly lit. Who knew how many candles and lanterns were lit? Just this alone would not be a small expense. Of course, the guests who could come here all had a small amount of money. They could casually give out enough to cover the expenses. Chapter 63. While he was still looking around, Yang Qindong was led to a square table. There were some fruits and tea placed on the table, and the location was close to the stage where the performers were performing. Although it wasn't the closest, it was still not bad. Yang Yang naturally sat down there, and then his gaze began to wander. He accidentally saw a few familiar faces, and waved his hand to greet them. Seeing Yang Yang's obviously flaunting expression, Yang Qindong helplessly shook his head. Fourth brother, what are you doing? Greeting acquaintances. Sigh, sixth brother, you don't know, but I rarely get to sit in such a position. To be able to sit here, just the table fee is 20 silver taels. Yang Yang explained and said with some heartache. Seems to be worth it. Yang Qindong also looked around. Looking at the environment, he nodded with satisfaction. He began to compare it with his own renovation drawings, and whether there was anything that could be improved. Seeing that Yang Qindong didn't seem to feel any heartache, Yang Yang relaxed. Although he was his own brother, he was still spending other people's money. It was impossible to say that he didn't feel guilty at all. He felt that he was putting on a show. In order to show that he was here and mainly to not feel guilty in front of sixth brother, he carefully pointed at the two tables closer to the stage and said, Sixth brother, do you see the people at those two tables? Yang Qindong's gaze moved. In his line of sight, there were two young people in their 20s sitting at the two tables. They were dressed in brocade and satin, and had arrogant expressions. It seemed that they didn't care about anything. Knowing that sixth brother was paying attention to them, he laughed and introduced them in a low voice. The young master in the east who looks a bit older is Su Qingzong. The one in the west is Zhang Da. Yang Qindong raised his eyebrows. Are they the descendants of the Duke of Wei and Duke Ying? Sixth brother is indeed knowledgeable. Su Qingzong was the eldest son of the current Duke of Wei, Su Qin. Now that his health wasn't too good, it was said that he would pass his title to this son. The one called Zhang Da is only the second son of the Duke of Ying, Zhang Fu. I don't think he has a chance of inheriting the Duke's position. However, I heard that he has a good relationship with his eldest brother, Zhang Mao. I think he should be able to live a comfortable life. In order to please his sixth brother or in order to have more money to spend, Yang Yang poured out as much as he knew. Yang Qindong nodded as he listened. He knew both of them and the Security Bureau had done a detailed investigation before. Duke of Wei Su Qin, grandson of the Prince of Zhongshan Suda. At that time, Suda was known as the #1 contributor to the founding of the Great Ming Dynasty. Naturally, his descendants enjoyed an extremely honorable status and glory. However, the later generations were still the later generations, and there weren't any truly capable people. In addition, the previous generations of emperors were worried that their achievements would shock the emperor, so they had always suppressed the use of them, making it even harder for them to achieve anything. At present, Su Qin's health wasn't good, and he was bedridden every day. As his eldest son, Su Qingzong, became more and more popular, and his status naturally rose along with it. As for the other person, Zhang Da, he was the second son of the Duke of Ying, Zhang Fu. As mentioned before, Zhang Fu had performed many meritorious deeds and could be considered a famous general. However, with the eunuchs in power, he was severely suppressed. This matter was mentioned in the previous chapter. Regardless, with the protection of the Duke of Ying, he wasn't someone that just anyone could offend. For a mere 9 arts workshop to be able to attract the support of 2 dukes' descendants, it could be seen that this Lady Xiang had some ability. Yang Qindong couldn't help but look forward to it even more. Yang Qindong sat on the chair calmly and took a sip of tea from time to time. Yang Qindong was enjoying himself here. This was his first time in the capital, so he didn't know many people. This saved him the trouble of greeting and feigning civility. Time slowly passed and the hall grew more and more lively. More and more people were led to the tables by the maids, and slowly the temperature in the hall began to rise. The odor of sweat began to fill the air, causing Yang Qindong to wrinkle his nose and shake his head. The ventilation here wasn't very good, so the odor couldn't quickly disperse. Just this point alone made it seem rather inferior. This wasn't like the immortal abode he was opening. Not only did it have transparent windows, it also had a layer of screen outside. In this way it could ensure that the air was not only ventilated, but also that mosquitoes couldn't get in. This was a truly refreshing place. While they were waiting, or perhaps they were suffering, the number of seats in the hall had reached more than 70%. With a series of light footsteps, 2 young girls who could be considered decent walked onto the stage, each holding a pipa. Yang Yang had been observing Yang Qindong this entire time, ready to give an explanation at a moment's notice. Seeing the 2 girls walk up, he leaned over and said, "Fourth brother, these 2 are here to warm up the scene. They aren't the main characters." Yang Qindong nodded. In his previous life, this was also how the theaters operated. The warm-up would appear first, and the main characters would only appear for the finale. With the appearance of the 2 warm-up girls, the hall became much quieter. The two girls bowed, and then the two girls holding the pipas slowly opened their cherry mouths and began to sing. Red dragonflies fly on the branches of the green poplar. When the spiders see him they spread their webs, gazing at him with infatuation. Spiders, don't look at me. I advise you not to think too much about this trap. Even if you exhaust your mind, it's just that your webs won't catch up. The style of the song was very slow, and it often took half a day to sing a single line. It was very similar to the Kuan opera of his previous life. This was also a famous song with dragonflies at that time. Some people even nodded and shook their heads in appreciation, as if they were reciting the 4 books and 5 classics. But regardless of what others thought, Yang Qindong looked as if he was about to fall asleep. He was obviously used to the pop music of his previous life, and he really couldn't appreciate the song in front of him. The song lasted for nearly an hour. Under someone's praise, Yang Qindong, who was about to fall asleep, was awakened. When he raised his head, the two girls had already bowed and left. In their place was a beautiful woman in her 30s. From Yang Qindong's position, he could see a trace of melancholy in the corner of the woman's eyes. He guessed that it must be a kind of accumulation of life. It was impossible to say that she didn't have any grievances after spending so many years in the entertainment industry. On the contrary, all kinds of people had to be welcomed with a smile, and all kinds of people could make you unhappy. But since she was doing business, she could only welcome them with a smile. After a long time, this melancholy naturally merged with her soul. Fourth brother, this person is the head procuress here, Chuina. She was very beautiful when she was young, and even now there are many people pursuing her. But all this time, she has been clean and has never had an affair with any man. Later on, she was chosen by the owner to manage this 9 arts hall. Speaking of which, she's not an easy woman. Yang, who was at the side, had a chance to show off, so how could he be polite? He envied his elder sister and younger sister in his heart. They could actually get a monthly salary of 1,000 taels from his 6th brother, but as his brother, he didn't get anything. This made him feel that it was unfair, and at the same time he also had an idea. That was to curry favor with his 6th brother and get more money. At the very least, he had to get close to his elder sister and younger sister and get the money first. As for whether his 4th brother would be looked down upon by others if he tried to curry favor with his 6th brother, he didn't care. The world was big, but money was the biggest, wasn't it? Also, Chuinar has already come on stage, which means that Lady Xiang is about to come on stage. She came on stage to ask for a reward. This is also called asking for a reward. In a while, whoever gives more money may be favored by Lady Xiang. If the opportunity is good, it is also very possible to become a guest. Yang was still there chattering. At this time, there were already people throwing silver taels and copper coins on the stage. One thing to note here was that the great Ming Dynasty didn't have banknotes, and even silver was very rare. The currency used by the Ming Dynasty was the precious banknote at the beginning of the Ming Dynasty. However, the precious banknote depreciated very quickly, so much so that it was like waste paper and no one was willing to use it. Private transactions mainly used copper coins and silver, but before the inflow of silver from overseas in the late Ming Dynasty, the Ming Dynasty's silver stock was limited, and the imperial court prohibited the mining of silver, so the silver circulating in the market was not abundant. The time when the first banknote company appeared in China was about the first year of Daoguang in the Qing Dynasty, after 1820. This first banknote company was called Ri Xing Chang, and it was from that time that banknotes appeared. Without banknotes, it also made it very inconvenient for people to trade when they went out. They often needed to bring a lot of silver or copper coins to trade. Just like now, people wanted to give a reward to attract the attention of Lady Xiang. For a time, silver taels filled the sky and flew onto the stage. Of course, only some small individual investors threw money on the stage. They gave too little, so they wanted to fish in troubled waters. They just wanted to prove that they were also generous people. Because they were embarrassed and had no money, they had this kind of method. For real rich people, there would be a pimp coming to the table with a plate to ask for money. Once he received the money, he would sing loudly to praise the noble status of the person who gave the money. Naturally, this kind of practice could also lead to a kind of competition mechanism, allowing more men to spend a lot of money here so that they could have a better harvest. The pimp began to move, walking to the front of the table, and the silver taels on the copper plate began to gradually increase. Yang Hodong was watching this scene with interest. This was completely different from what he had imagined, so naturally he was a little curious. While watching and imagining what kind of mechanism would be used when his restaurant opened, suddenly, he was awakened by a singing voice. Thank you, young Master Wang, for the 50 taels of silver. Chapter 64. Following the voice, Yang Qindong turned his head and saw a seemingly elegant young man smiling as he placed 5 taels of silver on a copper plate. His gaze drifted around as if he was showing off his height, wealth, and handsomeness to others. Sixth brother, only those who tip over 50 taels of silver will be praised and remembered by Lady Xiang. How much should we tip? Noticing that Yang Qindong seemed to be moved, fourth brother Yang Yang hurriedly added fuel to the fire. In any case, it was Yang Qindong's money. Even if he didn't tip Lady Xiang, he might not necessarily give it to him. Since that was the case, it was better to tip more. In that case, he would naturally be in the limelight. Oh, is there such a saying? Yang Qindong smiled when he heard this. Then he raised his index finger toward Tiger Mane, who was standing behind him. 100 taels? Sixth brother is bold. Yang Yang thought that he understood. Looking at the gesture, he chuckled. Then he sat down and waited for the turtle slave to come to his table so that he could show off. The turtle slave shouted and sang. Then he handed the 10 taels of silver on the copper plate and some money from the other people to the little turtle slave behind him. Then he walked to another table. However, it seemed that his good luck had run out. Or perhaps, most of the people who came today were embarrassed. In short, he didn't drink or sing. When he came to Yang Qindong's table, the turtle slave first lowered his head to show respect. Then, his gaze landed on the table of the 2 high dukes' descendants not far away. To be able to be a turtle slave who came to collect money, he had to have some status. Moreover, he had to have good eyesight. What kind of person could tip how much money he could naturally tell at a glance. In his eyes, this wasn't Yang Yang's first time here. This was the first time he had sat in such a good position. However, he was afraid that this was the extent of his ability. Perhaps there would be some money, but it definitely wouldn't be too much. Otherwise, he would have sat in the main seat where the 2 high dukes were sitting. Yang Yang already knew the result, so he had been waiting for the arrival of the pimp so that he could perform well. When he saw that the other party didn't even look at him, he couldn't help but sneer. Then he imitated Yang Qindong and nodded to Tiger's Mane behind him and said, "Reward." Tiger's Mane wouldn't listen to Yang Yang, even if it was his 4th young master. However, with Yang Qindong's previous order, when he heard the word reward, he obediently untied the bundle on his body, took out some silver and placed it on the copper plate. Compared to young Master Wang's reward just now, the silver coins this time were all 20 taels per ingot. Once he placed the coins in his storage ring, he received 5 ingots in the blink of an eye. Yang Yang looked like he was waiting for the tortoise slave to sing and drink, but who would have thought that Tiger's Mane still had no intention of stopping. The silver ingot in his hand continued to smash down. 10 ingots, 20 ingots, 30 ingots, 40 ingots. Yang Yang's expression changed greatly. This was far more than 100 taels of silver, but he still had no intention of stopping. This Tiger's Mane couldn't be stupid, right? What was he doing? He wanted to say something to stop him, but he was worried that he would lose face. He could only look at his 6th brother, Yang Qindong, but he still couldn't understand. Because his 6th brother's face was full of smiles, as if he didn't see the situation in front of him. He was still calm and unmoved. At this moment, the tortoise slave was also dumbfounded. He originally thought that the Yang family's 4th young master would at most tip 3 to 5 taels of silver, but who would have thought that the 4th young master would throw 20 taels of silver into the copper plate without even blinking an eye? The clanking sound of the silver ingot being thrown into the copper plate was incessant, to the point where he had to use both hands to support it, but he still couldn't support it. Fortunately, the little tortoise slave behind him had good eyesight and had already come to help. The 2 of them were barely able to support it with 4 hands. In the past, when someone tipped, the tortoise slave only felt happy and excited. According to the rules, he could also get a certain commission. In other words, the more he was tipped, the more he would get. Only today he felt the pressure. It was also the first time that he had the idea of quickly stopping the tipping because his hands really couldn't support it. Yang Yang and the tortoise slave's expression had already changed. Not only that, but the faces of everyone in the hall who saw this scene changed. Even Chuaner, who was standing on the stage, had her face turned red. It was unknown whether it was fear, excitement, or excitement. This scene also shocked the others. After the 2 high dukes saw this, their expressions also changed. When they saw a large amount of silver appearing on the copper plate, they seriously looked at Yang Qindong and Yang Qindong, who was sitting beside him, with an indifferent expression. What kind of person was Yang Yang? They often met him here, so they naturally knew. He was just the fourth young master of the Yang family. It was impossible for him to have such financial resources. Of course, it wasn't that they looked down on Yang, because even if he had so much money, he wouldn't take it all out. He still had to live. Not to mention, even if he took out so much silver, he might not be able to get Lady Xiang's favor. One had to know that with this amount of silver in hand, who knew how many concubines he could marry? There were other people who were also shocked when they saw this scene. There was envy, jealousy, and hatred in their eyes. Just like young Master Wang, who had just tipped 50 taels, his face was originally full of arrogance, but now even his head was lowered. He only tipped 50 taels and was already so complacent. Compared to the Yang family's tipping, wasn't he too ignorant and stupid? Regardless of what other people thought, Tiger's Mane followed Yang Qindong's orders and took out silver ingots one by one. Finally, after taking out a total of 1,000 taels, he stopped and then closed the huge bag on his body. 1,000 taels of silver was equivalent to 100 caddies, but the bag didn't seem to have decreased by much. People couldn't help but wonder how much silver was left in the bag. At the same time, they couldn't help but admire Tiger's Mane's strength. He didn't even bend over while carrying such a heavy bag. Looking at the two slaves who were already bent over by the weight of the 100 caddies of silver ingots, 2 more slaves came from afar to help. Only then did the leader find the time to sing. Yang Si has a reward, 1,000 taels of silver. As soon as the singing came out, the whole audience suddenly became quiet, but then it became noisy. Some of the friends who had greeted Yang before stood up from afar and cupped their fists to look at him. At this time they were all proud to have made such a friend. Yang, who had stolen the limelight, naturally also stood up and cupped his fists to salute everyone. His big mouth almost reached the back of his ears, and there was no need to mention how happy he was. This was definitely the day he was proudest of in his life. At this moment he felt as if he had reached the peak of his life, and his status seemed to have been raised by a lot. But what he didn't know was that those who were smart didn't even look at him, but at Yang Qindong, who was sitting at the side. There were even smarter people who had already guessed the identity of this person. The tortoise lowered its head so low that it almost reached its waist. Then it bent its head and bowed. It wasn't that there were no people who had tipped 1,000 taels of silver in the past, but they could be counted with one hand. Moreover, the last time was a long time ago. At least this was the first time he had been tipped as a slave. One could imagine how excited he was. When he thought of the commission he could get, he was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Turtle's Mane finally left and went to another table. But with Yang and unpolished jade in front of everyone, it was naturally difficult for other people's rewards to enter the eyes of others. Even if Su Qingzong and Zhang De each tipped 100 taels of silver, why did they feel that the slaves were so weak when they were singing? After the tipping session, the head of the house, the brothel keeper Chuaner, bowed again and then slowly retreated. She was replaced by a young girl wearing a red muslin dress, who walked on the stage with 4 maids with the same appearance. It was Miss Yang. She didn't do anything, but as soon as she appeared, she immediately attracted the loud cheers of everyone in the hall. Yang Qindong looked up. She was wearing a rose-scented tight robe with sleeves and an emerald green skirt with scattered flowers. Her waist was tied into a big bow with golden silk soft smoke gauze. Her hair was hanging low and was inserted with a jasper phoenix hairpin. Her slender figure was seductive and charming. The first impression she gave to the 6th young master was that she was gorgeous. This kind of person was described by the phrase, gorgeous and indescribable. She was very similar to the young Hong Kong actress Guan Jilin, who gave people a sense of seduction, eroticism, and temperament. When Yang Qindong looked at her, Miss Yang also looked at him. At that moment their eyes met. At this moment, the 6th young master felt that his heart seemed to beat a few more times. 6th brother, she's looking at me. She's looking at me. This beautiful feeling was quickly disrupted by 4th brother Yang Qindong. He looked like a pig and his saliva was about to flow out. He kept pulling Yang Qindong's sleeve and kept repeating it. Yang Qindong's thoughts instantly returned to normal. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. He already knew that Miss Yang was powerful. She could easily seduce people's souls. Often, with just a look, she could make a man lose control of himself. As soon as Miss Yang appeared, the scene suddenly became a little crazy. Everyone's eyes were like a rain of arrows, flying directly toward the stage. Miss Yang seemed to be used to this. She still did her own thing. First, she bowed apologetically. Then, a wooden table and a guqin appeared in front of her. Her jade-white hands gently moved forward and landed on the strings of the guqin. Then a soul-stirring sound of the guqin was heard. In an instant the whole place quieted down. This was the strength of the courtesan queen. She could suppress the stage in an instant and play a role in suppressing the audience. Following which, her jade-like hands continued to stroke the guqin. Beautiful melodies echoed out and entered people's ears, causing them to feel relaxed and happy. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.